This time on the Q Division podcast, we open the case of 1971's Diamonds Are Forever.
This episode, it's be gay, do crimes all the time.
Would you Streisand your pets if you won the lottery?
And we have a guest that this show wouldn't exist without.
All that and more on the Q Division. Hello, agents. Welcome to another episode of the Q Division. I'm Gavin, and I've seen all the James Bond movies.
I'm Chelsea, and I've seen 8 in a TV special?
Question mark?
Always. The Q Division's top secret mission is to take a deeper look at the history and impact of the James Bond films and other media through a queer lens. Speaking of, the Q Division is a proud member of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective. You can find out more about Glitterjaw and their roster of shows that run the gamut of queer media at glitterjaw.com.
And this week, we have something very special for you all. We simply could not have handled the return of Connery as Bond alone. So we have invited an agent who is actually more qualified than either of us. We're very pleased to welcome author, educator, blogger, podcaster, and creator of the website Licensed to Queer, an invaluable resource to any Bond fan, David Lowbridge-Ellis. Thank you for joining us, David.
It's my pleasure, Gavin, Chelsea. I've listened to a lot of your earlier episodes, so I'm really looking forward to, hopefully, after that really great billing there, hopefully living up to your expectations.
I think you will. I think
Absolutely.
Impossible to disappoint. I was just telling you, I was buttering you up before we even started the record, because I just wanted to say, when I first came up with this idea, which is a totally stolen idea from another Glitterjaw podcast called Screonk, where they're doing every Godzilla film. And I, being dumb American the way that I am, was like, nobody else is doing this. And then Google, within 5 minutes, everything that you've ever written basically came up. And it has been, I truly believe, an invaluable resource. I love everything that you've written, everything that you're doing, and I'm just blown away by the amount of stuff that you've been able to bring to Bond, because Bond does, as queer people, does feel a little impenetrable at some points. And I think the idea that there are other people out there who have the same sort of fascination that I have and the same interests, it's a nice welcome change to see something that, for all intents and purposes, should be very gatekeepy for queer people and doesn't feel that way. And I think a lot of more of how I felt doing this show, making me feel better about doing this show, has been specifically through your work. So I just wanted to really thank you, especially for even acknowledging our presence as part of this and coming on our show. But what you're doing out there it's so commendable.
Thank you so much. That's really, really great to hear. So just while I process compliments, because I'm not very good at that.
None of us are. We're
None of
queers.
us.
I know, exactly. It's very true what you've just said. That whenever I meet a new queer person and I'm introducing myself, and you don't have to go through the whole coming out thing you do have to, but you don't feel self-conscious about it with another queer person. But it's almost like I have to come out as a Bond fan to a queer person. It's almost like the same, and or if they've seen my Instagram or something, they'll be like, "Oh, so you're a huge Bond fan?" And my initial reaction is to kind of wince slightly and go, "Yeah, sorry," because it's like I'm approaching Bond very much from the point of view you've done, which is that it doesn't appear to be the most queer-friendly series of books, films, games, etc. on the planet. But there's something that's always fascinated me about it, and it's that in question of why I'm so drawn to James Bond, despite it appearing, superficially at least, not as a very queer, inclusive cultural space. And it's that why that's really driven me to do everything that I do. So that's how we've ended up with over 250,000 words, God knows how many hours, days worth of podcasts, videos, and everything else on the website. And I say we, because although I started Licensed to Queer in my head when I was about 8 or something like that, but seriously, starting when I was in my mid-20s, I started keeping a list. I think it was on paper originally, then I transferred it to my phone and all the rest of it, of gay stuff in James Bond. And
Oh,
but
that's
I
got to
could
be a
when
long
I
list.
it well it what and that's the thing. It started getting really, really long. But then I thought we can be a bit more ambitious than this. So when I actually started writing it, or I was gearing up, we've just celebrated our 5th anniversary of the website and everything. I thought, actually, I don't just want a gay man's point of view. I'm a cisgender, white, middle class gay guy. I want as many different perspectives as possible. So that's why I I I really enjoy engaging with people from across the LGBTQ plus spectrum. So we do have lesbian Bond fans, bisexual Bond fans, trans Bond fans, asexual Bond fans. We non-binary. We've got those points of view from so many different people. So that for me is the most gratifying part of License to Queer itself. I've just got to know some really amazing people.
I mean, that's once again so commendable because
I love all this.
yeah, there's nobody out here doing it like that, and that's it's so cool. And yeah, it seems like obviously a niche
Yeah.
but it makes me happy to not feel alone in that. And I'm glad that you
Mm.
are reaching out to other members of the
Mm.
LGBTQI spectrum because all those voices are important, and it's really cool to have their thoughts on this stuff because yeah, it can be problematic, but also like
Mhm.
there's recontextualizing some stuff too that I'm going to when we get into like the more body of the show, I'm actually going to quote some of your review uh from Diamonds Are Forever. Sorry that
Mm.
you have to hear your words back, but I think
Bye.
it's a really brilliant analysis. So
Thank you.
And it's been great for
I'll
me to watch a movie and then go check out your stuff to be like, okay, what was actually happening in this movie?
that's that's what I wanted really. I wanted so I think it's 6 queer reviews I haven't done. I'm currently working on one at the moment. I haven't done one for a while just because they take such a stupid amount of time,
yeah, they're very
mental
in
energy and
depth.
everything else. Yeah, so I mean, the earlier ones are more like 4,000, 5,000 words. They're somewhat manageable. And then I ended up writing 20,000 for Skyfall, and I was
Oh my
like,
God.
okay, this is getting ridiculous now. So the one I'm doing at the moment will probably be somewhere in between those two extremes. But that was my aim, really. I always wanted it to be something where if you've seen the movies loads of times, you'll read what I've written and see them from a different perspective and see things you wouldn't have noticed before. And I get a lot of really interesting feedback from non-queer identifying people who are just like, especially because we have not had a film for quite some time. But they go, I've seen this film 25 times, but I've seen it in a completely different light now.
Yeah.
And I always really enjoy that feedback. But similarly, like with you, Chelsea, you haven't seen all these films. And it's like I love it when you get a booklet with a DVD or Blu-ray or something like that.
Yes.
And you watch the film, and then afterwards there's like essays and things in the booklet. You tend to get that with things like Criterion and the kind of art labels. So it's almost like it works in that way as well. I hope that people who have never seen the film before, but then it's like, right, okay, let's try and make sense of what I've just seen from a queer point of view.
I love that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Also, I feel like straight people probably need the writing even more than queer people sometimes.
It's actually quite an intellectual challenge for me. It's a good job I'm an educator in my real life, because I try to write stuff that's sort of academic, and I use all of these, big ideas from philosophy and psychology and all the rest of it. Some of which I have to teach myself to be able to then write about them. But then I also have to explain queer stuff to straight people.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it's doing it in a non-patronizing way. So I'm just
Mhm.
like, ooh, it's that constant, balance. This is why it takes so flipping long to write anything, because it's treading that line between, okay, a lot of straight people won't get this, but at the same time, I don't want to Elliot, I want it to work for everybody. And if you're a
Yes.
queer identifying person, you'll understand what demisexual means. For instance, I'm just thinking of one of our main contributors, Fenner, who identifies as demisexual. So whenever I post anything about asexuality, and I even put the definitions of some of the terms for asexual identities up fairly recently for Asexual Awareness Week, because there's a lot of ignorance around that.
Yeah.
But it is constantly getting that it's a juggling act, really.
It's so funny too, because I mean, I don't want to derail us too far off of Diamonds Are Forever, but like I was actually just having this conversation with a friend of mine too, that it is one of those things where, like, especially people in the arts, you're an educator, Chels and I are both in post-production, like we have a tendency to think deeper about these things. And I'm not trying to say that other people don't think, but there is this idea that a lot of entertainment is just flat, and it is just exactly what you see, and there's nothing deeper to it. And that has always been sort of a frustration for me, because everything contains layers. And even down to just the construction, like I said, because we're both in post, like scenes are agonized over for hours. It's not just a flippant decision. And so it's cool to like peel back the layers on this particular thing that is James Bond, because there are a lot deeper things there, and you're seeing, what were the thought processes at the time, like what was not just only in popular culture, but what was in the political culture, and where did these kind of negative things that do pop up every now and then come from. And I think I said it in the You Only Live Twice episode, where a lot of times it sort of gets my goat when people are like, well, it's a different time, they didn't know better back then. And it's like, no, they truly did know better. They just knew they could get away with it. And we've sort of been democratized in being able to speak up for ourselves in a way to be like, hey, no, that's actually wrong, and you shouldn't do that. And I know that upsets people when you do it that way. And like you said, kind of, you want to do it as gently as possible because you don't want to really hurt anyone's ego. But at the same time, it's like, can't you see us all as humans? Like, isn't there a way to go about this that like you could do without hurting your fellow man or woman?
The way I always approach this is that, we've probably all been guilty is probably the wrong word, but we've probably all put our foot in it.
Yeah.
We've all been on so I've been on a journey learning about different trans identities quite a lot over the last 15 years or so. I didn't even, or wasn't at least aware of, actually in real life knowing any trans people. And of course, now I know loads of trans people. It's like we're always learning. And that's the point of view that I always take, that yes, actually, they did realize sometimes some of the things that they were doing were probably not that palatable necessarily. So we were talking a little bit earlier about, and you've got some of it in this as well, casting people who aren't the ethnicity that they appear to be on screen. Some of that was just convenience, which I know is not an excuse, because it's like, actually, do we know a decent actor who can portray this role? And some of it was just like, this isn't a problem. And they probably didn't know better in some regards, but we do know better now. So there's no point raking people over the coals and making people feel bad for past mistakes.
Right.
As long as they're prepared to learn. And the number one thing that gets me really, I'm quite a level-headed person generally, but I do get really, really angry when people are resistant to learning new things. And I think sometimes people see it as a personal failure because they think, I don't already know about this. Whereas I'm always that sort of person who's like, I don't know something, I'm going to go and learn about it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Like, I do this other podcast where we talk about like other TV shows, just rewatching them.
Yeah.
And like, this is very funny because I am an editor and I was a university educator academic in my past life before the pandemic. So I'm always just like, you can criticize things you love and it's not a personal attack on like your character or anybody else's. I always say I have interesting relationships with TV shows because I see the problems, but there's also the stuff I love.
Yeah.
And it's the exact same thing with this. Like, you can see all the problems in all of these movies, but then you can also see the interesting things they're doing as well. It's like, we don't have to be black and white. There's a lot of nuance to all of this. And half the time, all I want to just be like is, people are hot. Let's just go explore this. Go with an open mind. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to leave that. Before we do fully get into everything too, I do just want to check in with Chels because David, as Chels has pointed out, this is her first time with these, and
Mhm.
I always want to get the outsider's perspective. Chels, how you feeling about Diamonds Are Forever?
You know, after the 1967 Casino Royale, I was deeply questioning our friendship. And, like, why would people do that to Deborah Carr? For one, like, I mean, she's the best part, but why? It really made me question a lot of people. But this, I was like, yeah, it might be a little boring, but you know what? This is so much better than what I have previously watched. I'm having a nice time. People are beautiful. There's my favorite Hollywood feud. I will say, my continuous note throughout this whole show, if Amazon Prime is gonna own the rights to all of this, they can at least put it on their streaming platform, like, as part of it. Like, yes, I'm a paid Prime subscriber, have to be for certain things, but at least if you're gonna ruin a franchise, let us be able to watch the rest of it.
It is a little shocking. I am not an Amazon Prime member, so I'm speaking as an outsider, but it is a little shocking to me that they are not available for free. I know that they play on Pluto TV, but that's sort of random.
It
So like,
is.
and who wants to watch things with commercials, honestly? So, but yeah, it is a little shocking for me to find out that that they are not on there for free.
And I have a VPN, so I checked all across the world. These are very hard to stream anywhere.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're
Hmm.
saving it for like a bit when they launch their then some, but I don't know.
They have made them all free to view periodically. I don't know whether they do that. I think it's happened at least 2 or 3 times because when my husband and me do an annual watch along of a series of films for charity.
Mhm.
So we are actually this year we're doing in 4 weeks time at the point of recording. So it's the end of May. We are doing what we've called the Other Fellas. So we are doing Casino Royale, the TV special, Casino Royale, the 1967 version, which I will stick up for. Although I totally agree. I totally agree with Chelsea that Deborah Carr is the best thing about it. And what else are we doing? We're doing Lazenby, the one Lazenby. We're doing Dalton. So we're working our way through kind of all of those as but what we try to do is do them as watch-alongs with people so that they can do them for free. So we sort of, get lucky sometimes, and Amazon have put them on at that point, but they haven't done it recently. I don't know if they do that to try and get people to sort of dip into one and then they'll watch the rest.
Right.
I don't get the logic either, but I think they should all be freely available all the time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, they're already making paid subscribers watch ads because they refuse to
Mm.
go that extra step. But, like, come on, like, at least try to suck people in because you are making other James Bond content. And it
Mm.
is content. It is some of this is not real TV or films.
Okay. Why don't we get into a little bit of the pre to the movie and start with the book a bit. Diamonds Are Forever is the fourth James Bond book by Ian Fleming and was published on March 26, 1956 in the UK. Here we have another situation where the book is completely different from the film. Bond is sent to the United States to infiltrate a diamond smuggling operation. During his adventure, Bond runs afoul of the Spangled Mob, run by brothers Jack and Serafimo Spang, and their homosexual hitmen, Wint and Kid, who you will see in the film. He also meets Tiffany Case, a tough, no-nonsense gang member who hates men based on a tragic incident in her past. Bond also teams once again with Felix Leiter, no longer a secret agent, but a Pinkerton instead, and has an unpleasant encounter with a mud bath in Saratoga, New York, as well as a torture trip to an abandoned ghost town called Specterville. Finally, a trip on the RMS Queen Elizabeth back to England leaves James to ponder marriage and Winton Kidd dead in what Bond makes look like a murder-suicide. I just want to stop there to say real quick, I'm from Saratoga originally. I'm from Saratoga County, technically, a town over. And honestly, most flattering I will give Ian Fleming this. I was like, wow, he makes Saratoga sound real cool. And I'm sure it was in 1956, but it was certainly not that way in 1996. So Tiffany Case is an interesting problem. I I don't. It's really, they give her like, basically Ian Fleming implies that she's as tough as she is because of a really traumatic gang sexual assault that occurs prior to the book happening, and it's one of those, Chels, we've talked about it before. Like, I don't understand this urge to like, men don't have to have a reason for having depth, but women in fiction often have to have some sort of violence in their past that creates depth for them. And it's a terrible trope, and I hate it. And I will say, up until I found this out in the book, I was like, she's very cool. She's like, the way that Fleming writes her in the book is actually, she really is her own person. And it's sort of frustrating that he had to give her this tragic backstory.
Yeah, I feel like people should have saw my face because I was like, "Oh dear." And I'm just thinking back to, was it Jodie Foster who was
Yeah.
talking about, like, every single role she was offered in, like, the '80s and '90s? Something very terrible happened to her character? And, like, in The Accused, which I have mixed reviews on, we'll just say, some of it I understand, some of it I really didn't need to see, but I'm just like, "Wow, not every." Yes, most women and queer people, honestly, that have experienced some form of sexual assault in some way, but we don't have to make it that for the characters. Like,
Yeah.
ugh, no, oh dear.
Yeah.
That's
It's pretty
that's
tough.
troubling.
I do want to bring up a couple quotes that I particularly liked from the book. James Bond, the subject of marriage gets broached between him and Tiffany Case, and I think it's really funny because obviously, like, his opinion changes when it comes to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But she brings up marriage, and he says most marriages don't add two people together; they subtract one from another. Um,
Ooh.
she like really rebuffs this idea, but I think it's funny that this quote is the quote that like really I see this come up more often than not when I research this book. Also, the name is derived of the book is derived from like a ad slogan, but in the book it gets meted out as Mr. Nothing is forever, only death is permanent. Nothing is forever except what you did for me. And Bond responds with, death is forever, but so are diamonds.
I love that line,
Yeah.
because actually it's spoken from a dead man.
Yes.
It's Bond imagining right at the end of the book. So massive spoilers for the book. But it does end sort of along the lines of the film on a cruise liner with an encounter with Winton Kid, but it pans out a bit differently. But yeah, so I'd love to see a scene in a James Bond film where Bond imagines someone he's killed coming, essentially speaking from beyond the grave to him. I think it does give the book a little bit of depth. I don't think this book is remotely deep compared with some of the other Bond novels. A lot of Bond Fleming aficionados kind of rank this one right at the bottom of the pile because, if we're honest, the story makes no sense.
Yeah.
There is no reason for Bond to be on this mission. I love it for lots of its other qualities, like its characterization. I think it's really atmospheric. I think the food's great, the drink, and all those sorts of things. But it's not a particularly deep book. But I think that line that you've just selected from near the end does give the book a little bit of resonance, which might not otherwise be there.
It's funny too because I had read in some of my research for this that the boat trip back, which only encapsulates about 3 chapters towards the end of the book, but were added very late in the game, and they're some of the best stuff in the book. They truly, they almost feel like a complete side adventure and could work as like a really good James Bond short story. But yeah, the rest of the book around it is a little tougher. Also, that
I do actually refer to this book sometimes as James and Felix's big gay holiday.
yes,
Yes. This is
Because
correct.
there is no reason for James and Felix to spend so much time together.
Yeah,
Gay people do love vacations. Like,
that's true.
we are going to perpetuate that stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I love this marriage quote, like, completely out of context. I love these quotes. Like, put this marriage one on a t-shirt for me. But oh my gosh, yes.
In terms of production of the movie, early in production, before casting decisions could be made, since obviously, as we talked about in the last episode, George Lazenby had already opted out of doing more films. Before they even figured out to replace him, it was decided that the tone of the franchise going forward should revert back towards that of Goldfinger, because that was sort of the last true hit, which I think is kind of a misnomer, because we talked in our Thunderball episode about how that was the highest grossing for a long time. Saltzman and Broccoli decided to rehire Richard Maybaum back into scripting duties, and also bring back Goldfinger's director Guy Hamilton, because they kind of thought this was like a magic duo. Richard Maybaum worked on several drafts, including one that would have continued right from the ending of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, with the return of both Irma Bunt and Draco. His next draft set the action in Vegas, much like the book, but also features a completely original villain in the form of Goldfinger's twin brother, who was planning on using a laser cannon hidden inside his supertanker ship. This idea was rejected, and they decided to start over with the script. Cubby Broccoli seeks out someone who can bring an American perspective to the film, but also keep its Britishness. And so he hires Tom Mankiewicz to both rewrite Maybaum's script, as well as adapt elements of a dream Broccoli had about Howard Hughes being trapped in a penthouse and replaced by a double to the script. I love that Broccoli was like, I got this idea. Like,
I had a dream,
I had a
but it was
dream.
actually the original Hangover movie. I love that the Mankiewiczes are getting involved, because it's
Yes.
like Nepo, like, child of this very famous, very talented,
Writer,
like,
director,
Hollywood dynasty of great writers and directors.
nephew of the titular Mank of Citizen Kane fame as well. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, he certainly wasn't like plucked out of a field of nobodies, let's say.
Nope.
I don't want to get too sidetracked here about the Maybaum scripts, because in fact, I think it was about 2-hour podcast that me and Tom Mason, he's a film academic at a university here in the UK. We read all of the
Oh my God.
drafts and treatments for Diamonds Are Forever before Tom Mankiewicz got involved.
Oh.
And let's just say, whatever you think of the finished film of Diamonds Are Forever, it's completely sane compared with what Maybaum came up with. If I tell you that a key plot point well, actually, interestingly, a lot of them start the way that sort of Skyfall ends, with Bond living in a remote moor, where he's grieving the death of his wife as well. So it is a direct continuation. So there's loads of variants of that one. But the highlight for me of one of the later treatments was that as part of the plot, I can't remember the reason why I gave up at that point, but M was kidnapped and held hostage in a hippie commune.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's one of the more sane things as well. There's so much random stuff that Richard Maybaum. I think there was a bit of a creative crisis, let's put it that way, with Diamonds Are Forever. So they'd, done all the Connery run. They'd done On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is one of the closest to the Fleming books, and that had a very different tone in a lot of ways. So it's like, which direction do we go in? And yes, they went more fun, frivolous, and filthy, and so they definitely pushed into the the sleazy elements, which is one of the. And I say this with love; it's one of my favorite James Bond films. But it makes you. I've often said it makes you feel like you want to shower by the time you've finished watching it.
Yes.
Or along it is grimy in lots of regards, especially if you compare it with the class of On Her Majesty's just 2 years before.
Yeah.
But I think we've got Tom Mankiewicz to thank / blame for most of that griminess, because but Richard Maybaum's versions were just absolutely off the wall.
I got a call from my agent saying, how would you like to write a James Bond movie? I thought he was joking. I mean, this monstrous joke. Cubby Broccoli was saying, I need a writer to rewrite this script. I want him to be young. I'd like him to be American. but he has to have a command of the British idiom.
He's a perfect writer for this because he writes larger than life and he writes with attitude.
Well, I was like a kid in a candy store. I couldn't believe that I was there as the writer of a Bond movie.
I need to find this laser cannon supertanker one immediately.
I gotta say, nothing says American like fun, filthy, frivolous. So yeah, that truly is. Considering a further Americanization of James Bond might be the change they need to get them back into the hit lane. Adam West of the 1960s Batman was considered for the role.
Adam West was on a publicity tour in London. And he did come to the house, and of course he was under contract playing Batman. I guess you might say that they had the conversation. He was considered.
Among others also considered, Clint Eastwood, Robert Wagner, and Burt Reynolds.
Oh dear.
David, you have no... I mean, I know you're a person that exists in this reality, so I know you... But truly, you have no idea how many bullets he dodged by not having a Burt Reynolds James Bond.
So many. If you had a Robert Wagner James Bond, yes, the behind-the-scenes gossip would be like at an all-time high, and I would love that. But it would be the worst film you've ever seen because he's the worst actor.
Yeah, he's terrible. However, after a trip abroad, Cubby Broccoli signs American actor John Gavin, hey Gavin, of Psycho fame to the role of Bond. However, United Artists were dead set on Connery coming back to the role.
Cubby found this very good American actor by the name of John Gavin, and he was actually signed to play Bond.
Clearly, the franchise was in trouble. We had one challenge. We said to Harry and Cubby, we got to get Sean back. Sean wasn't about to talk to Harry and Cubby. I'll make a 2-picture deal with him. He can make any 2 pictures he wants. Any 2. I don't care. They're approved right now, $1 million each. And I will pay him $1,250,000 to do the next Bond movie.
Having been away for 4 years, I think one had made the point too with the lack of success of the one previous, the one that I wasn't in anyway. And coming back in to do this one, to make the conditions of not being so much a pawn in the circumstances.
And John Gavin graciously steps down, and Cubby Broccoli ends up making sure Gavin's contract is paid in full, which it's so funny to hear that after they were like, wouldn't give Connery a raise. But Cubby Broccoli was like, give him all the money.
John Gavin's at least very hot.
Oh, yeah.
Like, very
yeah.
hot. Like, devastatingly hot.
It's like Hitchcock knew what he was doing with that opening scene of Psycho.
Oh, absolutely.
If anyone by any miracle hasn't watched Psycho listening to this, go and watch that. Like, obviously, as soon as you finish listening to this. But yeah, that opening scene, it's like people often say that the Marvel bod and all that, didn't exist back then. It's like, look at John Gavin and you go, oh my God.
Yeah.
So
Watch
it's
him
quite...
in Imitation of Life because it's
Oh,
maybe the
yes.
most beautifully
Yeah.
filmed anybody's ever looked.
Berserk.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
He's so hot.
yeah.
Connery ends up getting paid around $1.25 million and immediately donates that money to a charity trust that he had started for artists in Scotland called Scottish International Education Trust. And because of this high fee, the normally large special effects budget had to be scaled back. This is actually very good. As much as we kind of poo-poo Connery, this is actually a very good charity that he runs. It was a charity created around the idea that artists would not have to move out of Scotland in order to maintain the sort of money that they wouldn't be making in Scotland. So it was like it's a little nationalist, but it's kind of a good idea. I do think more places, like if you're from somewhere, you should be able to not have to go somewhere else in order to get paid for what you do, especially if it's in the arts.
Sean gave all that money away, and it was $1.25 million.
He contributed his fee to Scottish Educational Trust Fund.
I started 3 years ago a trust in Scotland, Scottish International Education Trust.
Young Scottish artists, writers, painters, who could get the money if they stayed in Scotland.
With this, I could launch the trust with so much money that there could never be an excuse for it not succeeding.
Love that.
I think a lot of people do criticize Connery for being quite greedy. I believe he was underpaid, certainly by today's standards in the earlier films. But yeah, the fact that a lot of people forget that, and he did give it all away to charity.
Yes, yeah.
And
See,
that charity still
nuanced
exists
people.
today. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And that's interesting. I guess I've never thought of him as greedy because I agree with you. I do think he was underpaid, especially for how big these movies were. And I do think, I said it in our You Only Live Twice episode. I think if you're being mistreated at work, you should quit that job.
Yeah.
I know it's easier said than done for a lot of people, but like Connery clearly knew like he could be making his money elsewhere and getting more for it. Also, and I didn't put this in the notes, but he also part of the deal that United Artists made with him also meant that he got a 2-picture deal. He could make any 2 films that he wanted, and it didn't go well. He only made one.
Oh no.
So
Hopefully he got paid for the other one anyways.
I hope so too. Jill St. John becomes the first American Bond woman, and after she's initially eyed for the role of Plenty O'Toole, but she's quickly cast instead as Tiffany Case, Lana Wood, who based on an appearance on the Spy Hards podcast was not in fact dubbed, takes on the role of Plenty O'Toole based on a suggestion from Mankiewicz. Jazz musician Putter Smith and actor Bruce Glover take on the roles of gay assassins Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint, respectively. Glover replacing Paul Williams after an inability to agree on salary. Jimmy Dean, the musician and Sausage King, is cast as Willard White, a stand-in for Howard Hughes, who was actually Dean's employer at the time, and Lola Larson, a stage name used by gymnast Mary Hiller, and Trina Parks, both gymnasts, were cast as Bambi and Thumper. Finally, Charles Gray is cast as the face of our third Blofeld after his last appearance as Dicko Henderson in You Only Live Twice. Oh no, that character died.
Oh no, he died.
He died. I think this is one of my favorite James Bond casts, all around. I actually I love Paul Williams. I've met Paul Williams. He's super sweet guy, though he did kind of shade me because I'm not an autograph hound ever. I did bring my copy of Phantom of the Paradise for him to sign, and he's like, "Oh, do you want me to personalize it?" And I was like, "Oh, you don't have to," thinking that would be easier. He was like, "Oh, so you're gonna put it on eBay?" I was like, "Oh shoot." I was like, "I'm not," but okay. But I think Bruce Glover is so excellent and so just delicious as Mr. Wint. It's so funny, and we're probably going to talk about this a bit later, but like obviously Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd are not handled in any sort of sensitive way, but there is something really delicious about the way that they played it. They're not I believe it was Putter Smith who said like we didn't play it super gay because that's just who the characters were. It wasn't like we were mincing about or anything. It wasn't any stereotypical, stylization. It was just like these are gay characters. Like the audience knows, so why have to make it any more obvious?
Well, the audience has the inside information, so you don't need to act like you're gay. If they know you are, then that's all that's necessary.
Yes, I loved them. They brought a Looney Tunes aspect that I deeply respect because I think these movies do need like some goofiness in them. They need to be a little silly, and they brought the exact dose of that while playing it straight, which made it even better. They were so much fun. I want to see a spinoff of them just terrorizing people.
I mean, that's basically what a portion of the movie is.
I think it's really clever that we're pretty much on their side right from the outset.
Yeah.
Like when they kill the homophobic dentist. So if you're a queer viewer, it's like, yes, smash straight society sort of thing. And they do put Bond in danger by putting him in a pipeline, but a hideously inefficient way to kill somebody.
Yes,
what a fun way to kill somebody.
Fun, and I love that laugh they do as they drive away because they can imagine him waking up the next day in the pipeline. It's such a great moment. And until the last scene, they don't really terrorize Bond all that much. Most of the people they kill, you kind of want them to kill anyway.
Yeah.
And like, had they killed Bond, I wouldn't have blamed them. Yes, they were doing something wrong, but I support gay wrongs.
Yeah, absolutely. The pipeline whole sequence is maybe an all-timer for like really could have just killed him. really could have you're going to extremes to avoid killing this man. He's a problem.
Where's the fun and whimsy in that, Kevin?
That's true. That's true.
I will say the Jimmy Dean guy, once I saw his name pop up, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And then I got excited. Big fan of your work in the kitchen, bro.
And then obviously, I promised in You Only Live Twice Charles Gray would return. I think Charles Gray, I love that he's literally not going for anything Donald Pleasance did. He's not going for anything Telly Savalas did. He's just hamming it up. He's having a great time. He's playing Blofeld super effete. He has the really long cigarette holder. No idea where that came from. That's not from either of the prior versions of Blofeld. The fact that he gets to play multiple versions of Blofeld in the movie too, this is Charles Gray is just having a feast, and I'm there for it.
And he's so hot.
He really is.
Oh, love seeing him pop up every single time.
A lot of the negative criticisms of Charles Gray is that he's not as Blofeld, which of course I don't endorse at all because he's by far the best Blofeld. But is that he's not physically threatening. But actually, Charles Gray was a massive guy.
Yeah.
He was well over 6 feet. And I'm not sure that necessarily comes across on film. Certainly not in this film. But I mean, he's just an absolute laugh riot, isn't he? But also quite scary in some kind of really hard to define way because he's just so offhand and irreverent about everything. A bit like Bond, really. I think that these films do such a good job. The Mankiewicz films do such a good job of everyone's talking in quips and they're almost kind of self-conscious about. They're such brilliantly dialogue heavy films, the Mankiewicz films. And I know that's a lot of the reason why some people don't like Diamonds Are Forever, because he's so much more dialogue heavy than a lot, and that's partly because of the budgetary constraints which we've talked about and all the rest of it. But I just love how shady Blofeld is throughout the whole thing. I actually wrote an article fairly early on in License to Quit called 15 Shades of Grey, which is I went through literally every salty comment that Gray conveys in the film, and it was hard to pick just 15, to be honest. But yeah, there's some absolute howlers, and some of them are almost kind of thrown away. I'm aware I'm talking to people who know editing, but it's almost like the lines are just uttered, and some of them really register. But the more you watch this film, the more you just realize how hilarious some of the lines are. I mean, my favorite one is right towards the end when on the oil rig that Dr. Metz is losing it. So the kind of physicist that he's lulled into thinking he's going to solve world peace, but really he's holding the world to ransom with this giant space laser. And he says, as the oil rig's being attacked, he says, "Calm yourself, Metz. This farcical show of force was only to be expected. The great powers flexing their military muscles like so many impotent beach boys." And I'm like, it's just unpicking that line. You're just it's such a queer line, obviously, because he totally gets the kind of the military industrialist complex, and he reduces it to basically a penis joke.
Yeah.
He then starts targeting all of these really phallic symbols around the world, like missiles and submarines, and he's basically this gay guy on an oil rig going, "I know exactly what you guys are trying to do, and I'm just going to shoot down all of the weaponry, you pathetic beach boys with your steroids and all the rest of it." He's I love all of his lines.
This is why it's important to cast queer people in queer roles.
Yeah.
Because he came prepared for this reading challenge, and so beautiful, so authentic. Gay people are the shadiest people you know. Oh, I love him so much. People don't understand. I'm rooting for the villains low-key this time around. They're having a great time.
They actually tried to edit out some of the lines because Cubby Broccoli was always really kind of conscious about playing to the most the biggest audience possible, shall we say. So there are some lines that almost got cut out, like as La Rochefoucauld observed, humility is the worst form of conceit. I do hold the winning hand. He's making all these allusions to 17th century French noblemen and all that, all those sort of things. But it's I just love it.
The Impotent Beach Boys line, actually, I've revisited this film a lot. I do like this movie a lot. I think because of how campy it is. And I'd never processed that line until I read your review, your queer review. And just like, and this time it stood out. And I was just like, oh my God, it's so smart. And once again, I think Mankiewicz is also playing to the strengths, because I know that there was a certain amount of rewriting that was occurring while the filming was being made as well, too. So I think he certainly, keyed into who was cast and what they were doing. And speaking of continuing casting, Lois Maxwell, Miss Moneypenny, she was originally written out of the script because she'd asked for more money. She also claims that, shooting Bond interfered with her doing other movies, which I totally get, that she would have to sort of stop down shooting other movies and go for like a week to go shoot Miss Moneypenny. However, when her pay dispute was resolved, a hastily written scene was added so she could be included. If you noticed, in the one scene she's in, her and Connery are never actually in the same frame, as they had to be filmed separately, which I'm sure she was bummed about, since this ends up being Connery's last official James Bond movie in the Eon series.
Oh, glad they brought her back in. I love her. How can she have chemistry with somebody who's not actually there in front of her?
She does,
She has
though.
all the strengths.
She really does. The temptation of being on location in Vegas was too much for many of the crew, reporting that several of them gambled all day and night and no one ever went to bed. Connery said he rarely slept except for on the weekends, and that was only when he wasn't playing golf. So I've heard Guy Hamilton said that there were like literal, like, he's like, it wasn't on the schedule, but golf was on the schedule in order to keep Connery happy. Besides the gambling, Vegas proved quite the asset to the film, as producers were quite close to Howard Hughes at the time, and he'd owned several hotels and casinos there. To film the chase through the main strip of Vegas, Cubby Broccoli was able to get them to close the roads for 5 nights in collaboration with Hughes, the Las Vegas Police, and the Shopkeepers Association. Most of the hotels in the movie are actually owned by Hughes, but the owner of the Circus was just a huge Bond fan and let them use it for a scene, as well as made a cameo appearance in the film. And on a gossipy note, according to co-star Lana Wood and other sources, Connery carried on affairs with both her and Jill St. John throughout the film. I know you put a note down there earlier, Chels, or later,
I
but
love feuds.
I'm going to pull this pin out already, because this feud is wild, continues basically until today. I think the last...
It is still happening today.
Yeah.
Lana Wood is still throwing hands in the 2020s.
Well, I mean, it doesn't help that Jill St. John goes on to marry Robert Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
Lana Wood is Natalie Wood's sister.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie Wood, who died while married to Robert Wagner under mysterious circumstances. Not implying anything. Just saying.
I encourage
mysterious.
everybody to Google Lana Wood 2023, because she reveals who she is 100% certain who killed her sister. This is the gossip I live for. When I saw this, I immediately texted my friends, because we talk about the Lana Wood and her feuds all the time.
It's I also, just a sidebar, and I have no idea like what was happening with his home life. Connery's married during this point. So not only is he dating these 2 women, he is also has a wife. Just saying.
Interesting. I was gonna say, because doesn't he divorce his wife?
He does, not for another 3 years, I want to say. I think 74 is when Connery... Why do I know when Connery divorced? Ugh, I'm gross. I don't like that. I wish I knew math. Okay. Ken Adams designs the moon buggies for the moon buggy chase, but was instructed to add arms to make it look more science fiction-y. However, he used accurate wheels, and the desert sand proved too much for them, and they constantly had to replace them. I just think it's funny that the moon buggies can handle the moon, but not the desert. In terms of product placement, a deal was struck with Ford Motors that they could crash as many of their cars as they like, as long as Connery would drive the 1971 Mustang Mach 1 in the film, which is Tiffany's car, but he does drive it during that chase. Lana Wood also had a brush with death while filming the scene where her body is found in the pool. Her feet were actually tied to a cement block to hold her under, but she could come up from air between takes. However, the block was placed on a slope and would move further down after every take without the crew noticing. Luckily, Wood was a trained diver and never panicked before someone realized what was happening.
Again, her sister drowns a decade or so later. Lana being an experienced scuba diver and then Natalie not even wanting to touch water. Y'all, this film, it runs deep. Her web connects us all.
In terms of the famous car chase continuity error in the film, I'm just going to put in a sound clip. I'll let that explain itself.
The American stuntmen unfortunately cannot perform the stunt. A French team is called in, but they do the stunt on the opposite set of wheels.
But they did it the wrong way round.
The driving seat is down. The French guy does it the other way down. The driving, I said, I don't. So long as they're on two wheels, it's all the same to me, wheelie up or wheelie down.
That attitude doesn't last when the dailies arrive.
To this day, every time I see it, my heart goes in my mouth. If you look at it, it's down on one side, but no way could it have turned on the other side.
Eventually, an innovative solution is found.
There's only one answer.
When we did the close-ups, we were on a soundstage, but the car still went like this.
And in the middle there, we slipped this shot of the car.
Due to a misunderstanding, the first AD ended up setting off explosions during the final run of the big oil rig finale, just during rehearsal. And luckily, quick-thinking cameramen were able to start rolling, and some of the footage in the final film is from this rehearsal, which ended up not being a rehearsal. Guy Hamilton was said to have taken the mistake in stride. There's this great moment where I've seen interviews where, the first AD is over there, really apologizing. Guy Hamilton was just like, I'll handle it. And the first AD is like, no, I'm really sorry. And he's like, I will handle it. So
that is very comforting to hear because the mistakes on these films do cause so much concern.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad he was able to stay cool under an explosion.
Yeah. I love talking about the music. So in terms of music, John Barry once again wrote the score and the theme, bringing back lyricist Don Black, who had previously provided lyrics to Thunderball. Don Black, literally one of the best in the game, came up with the idea that the song should be written from the perspective that diamonds were a stand-in for the penis, with lyrics such as stroke it and caress it.
Don wrote the lyric and he said, well, what do we sing about? I said, why don't we treat a diamond like it's the male sex organ? And so he said, yeah. I said, well, just sing about a diamond like it's a you-know-what. And when you read the lyrics, touch it, caress it, da, 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 da. I mean, if you submit that thought, you probably enjoy the song again. Shelley would say, what's it about, John? I said, I'll tell you what you do. Don't sing about a diamond. Sing about a penis.
It was a song with a wink.
They also brought back Shirley Bassey for the second time to record the song because, in the words of John Barry, she is James Bond. When Black and Barry played the first recording of the song for Saltzman and Broccoli, Saltzman told them it was obscene and would never be the theme.
He said, it's filthy. Touch it, stroke it, and undress it. You can't put that in a lyric. And he said, I don't like the music either. And then John's Yorkshire bluntness came out.
I said, Harry, you hated Goldfinger. You are tone deaf. He went as red as the Red Sox he usually were.
And Saltzman stormed out.
He was so impossible to deal with. I mean, some people you can deal with, some people you can't. I could never deal with Harry and didn't.
I thought that's the end of that. Next.
Broccoli, on the other hand, loved it and okayed it for the film. I believe he asked for some scotch and then told him that it would work.
I love this. Also, They're correct. She is James Bond. I love her.
Yeah, sure. I mean, inextricably, when it comes to James Bond, you can't remove her from the success. And I do think music is such a huge part of these movies. And truly, like I said, too, Don Black, his lyrics for these, I mean, do you know off the top of your head, David, how many, I don't want to put you on the spot, but he ends up, I want to say like 5 or 6, all the way up to Garbage's The World's Not Enough.
I'm just trying to say Thunderball, Diamonds Are Forever, World Is Not Enough. I know I've missed one somewhere in the middle.
There is one in the middle, and I can't think of it either. I hope I'm not saying all these good things.
Man with the Golden Gun as well.
I was just gonna say, I hope I'm not saying all these good things, and it's The Man with the Golden Gun, which is one of the worst. But hey, you know what? We all make mistakes.
That song was written really, really quickly, so I don't think we should really judge the lyrics.
And like, I know the Oscars had it out for James Bond literally up until Adele, but the fact that this was not even nominated
I know
is bothersome, especially since they brought out some D-lister to sing it again this year.
One of my favorites. It's so one of my, and
It's
I also
so good.
I also love the fact that it's smart. Like Barry was smart enough in terms of writing the music that he like saw what was coming, and like there's almost like a disco-y beat that comes in at the end of it too. And this was like early days of disco, that was not like hugely radio popular in the early 70s. Like, so yeah, I don't know. I feel like good on them.
Yeah. No, it says a lot that I have never watched these movies before this podcast, but the moment I saw Diamonds Are Forever, I'm like, oh my gosh, that song's a bop. Let's do it. Fired up. Love it.
You've heard the David McCalman version, yeah?
Yes.
I have. Oh my gosh.
And the video, it's there on YouTube. So you've got David Arnold, the Bond composer David Arnold, who produced Diamonds Are Forever. He's really camping it up in the video. He's a straight guy, but he's there in his makeup and I think he's got nail polish on and all the rest of it. So he's sat there at the piano, camping it up with David McCalman, who's trying to sort of seduce him.
I don't need love. Do me. Diamonds never light me. For when love is gone, they last alone. Diamonds are forever.
So a gay guy who's imagining breaking out of his humdrum reality somewhere in a less salubrious part of London, and then he goes into the bathroom and suddenly he's got Shirley Bassey like earrings and everything else on. It's it's a heck of an experience.
I am watching that when we get out of here.
I really love David Arnold, and I kind of can't wait till we get to his era of Bond. And I have very strong feelings about them not using him for some of the later Daniel Craig films, but whatever, it's fine. I will sit in those feelings. The movie ended up having an odd rollout. It opened in West Germany first on December 14th, 1971, the United States and Canada on the 17th, and then having its official UK premiere on December 30th. I'm very curious about that. Like it seems like the UK would always be first when it came to James Bond films, but for some reason was more towards the back half. The film remained number one at the box office in the United States for 7 weeks and went on to gross $116 million, $43 million of which was from the US and Canada alone. Contemporary reviews are mostly surprisingly kind, especially after they were kind of rude about some of the previous James Bond films, welcoming both the turn towards silliness and the return of Connery. Vincent Canby of the New York Times wrote in his positive review, quote, "A lot of things have changed since You Only Live Twice, the last real Bond adventure, but 007 has remained a steadfast agent for the military-industrial complex, a friend of the CIA, and a triumphant sexist. It's enough to make one weep with gratitude." Okay, rude, and also rude to come out sideways for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but whatever. More contemporary reviews have been less kind, seemingly because it lacks the spectacle and because of the camp elements. In 2008, Total Film listed Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd as number one in the worst Bond villain category, homophobia. Homophobia. That's literally it, because
they were doing great work. Their success rate was so high. They were so efficient. They knew how to have fun.
Yeah. All right, David, here's the time that comes that I'm going to just quote you for long periods of time. If this embarrasses you at all, please plug your ears. A quote I quite like from the License to Queer review of Diamonds Are Forever, and I put a link to the full review in there. You say, quote, as a kid, I reacted differently to the very last shot of the scene with Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd walking away, hand in hand, into the sunrise, depending on whether I was watching the film alone or with my parents or grandparents. If I wasn't alone, I froze, determinedly staring straight ahead at the screen, not focusing on anything in particular, so scared anyone would see a parallel between the psychopathic killers / gay lovers and me. However, if I was all by myself, I would stare with intent. I would stare at their interlocked fingers and wonder if I could ever find the same kind of happiness with another person, minus the murderous occupation, of course. You know what? Dream your dreams. Objectively speaking, I know Wint and Kidd are, to use an overused term nowadays, quote, problematic. But when there are no model couples for a young gay kid to emulate, they really made an impression on preteen me. Rewatching the film, I was stuck with how sympathetically the two straight actors, Bruce Glover, father of actor Crispin Glover, and Putter Smith, a jazz musician appearing on the film for the first time, portray Wint and Kidd. My favorite moment is Wint glaring jealously at Kidd after he told his partner, I must say Miss Case seems quite attractive for a lady. Kidd laughs nervously, aware that he has upset his beloved. And then you go on to say, Wint and Kidd are definitely not characters you could, quote, get away with today. With good reason. But for a time, they were the only significant out-representation in Bond films. And for this kid growing up, fearing their gayness, that was better than nothing.
Beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. I grew up with these movies. Funny enough, I think I mentioned before, my dad bought me the Roger Moore movies first, so I always have a soft spot for the Roger Moore movies. But I like co-sign this 100% because I remember we had this channel here in the US called TBS, David, that used to do James Bond marathons in November basically every year. And I remember seeing Diamonds Are Forever for the first time on TBS, commercials and all, but like just being like what is happening here? Like who are these? And the fact that it is so in your face, the fact that it, and once again, you're right, it is, quote, problematic, and they could not be done this way, or they be handled in a certain more sensitive way. I do think that because I was exposed to this, I was like, oh, I see a reflection of something in myself. And, it's really beautiful, besides the fact that they're murderers.
I will say, this is the be gay, do crime that I support. They're in a loving relationship. I condone everything they're doing. They're just in love, and Lord forbid they have hobbies. But, like, seriously, it's very fun because I'm marathoning Doctor Who again, and I'm like, wait, are they Jenny and Vastra right now? They just going around doing crazy stuff and being gay. I love it.
Amazing. Yeah. I truly once again, I will continue to say it. I think your website and everything you've done with License to Queer is an invaluable service. So thank you.
No, thanks so much. It was I hadn't actually reread or revisited that queer review recently. It was actually one of the very first things I wrote. So I wrote that 5 years ago. But it's I stand by every single punctuation mark in what you've just read out.
Read poorly, by the way.
No, I do overuse subordinate clauses, so they are a bit. Whenever I do the podcast version of an article myself, I'm like, David, why do you make these sentences so long? And I sometimes go back and change the punctuation a little bit. But my view hasn't really changed. I think I've found out more things about the characters, and other researchers have sent me interesting articles about how they were perceived at the time and that sort of thing. But that was my initial reaction to those characters as a kid, and I tried to capture how it felt in words, and I still feel that way when I watch them today. Obviously, I don't need to worry about people seeing my reaction to Wint and Kidd, but it's a really, when Bruce Glover passed away fairly recently, the first thing I thought of was that shot where they are walking away into the sunrise, two men holding hands on screen in 1971. And bearing in mind that here in the UK, homosexuality had only partly been decriminalized 4 years before the release of this film. So that was quite a daring, creative risk. And I must say, a lot of people actually criticize Guy Hamilton's directions of the Bond films but he was prepared to push the envelope a little bit, and fair play to the producers as well and the writers. You know, you have Live and Let Die, the Bond film that follows this, and they knew that that film would not be able to be shown in southern states of America, certain states, because that it actually featured James Bond, not the main girl, which it probably should have been based on the novel, but at least James Bond having sex with a black woman, and that was so taboo. So there was an edginess to the earlier Bond films, and I think some of the later Bond films as well. I think some of the ones in between sort of played it a bit safe. But that's, to be honest, that's what I'm sort of hoping for with the new set of
Yeah.
Bond films. Wherever we get that, they do continue to push the envelope. My worst fear, and you should, as Ian Fleming says in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, worry is a dividend paid to disaster before it's due. So let's not worry, about it until it arrives. But I don't want a Bond series that doesn't have some edge to it, because although a lot of people think it is quite safe, formulaic and whatever, you actually look at it and you go, actually, there is some sort of edgy stuff being sneaked into mainstream media here. And I think it was a bold move in 1971 to do what they did.
That's such an interesting point, and actually that made some thoughts sort of coalesce in my brain. One of our previous guests, Dan Mecca, who was on our From Russia with Love episode, brought up that, like, when the James Bond movies first started out, they weren't seen as high art by any means. They're kind of, for lack of a better term, like very expensive B movies. And I wonder if part of that envelope pushing, because I host another film podcast called The Mixed Reviews, and we've talked a lot about, like, that is a space where you could get away with a lot of subversive material, because the idea was that, you were playing more for select audiences and you weren't necessarily pushing towards the mainstream. However, James Bond is pushing towards the mainstream and does become kind of prestige. Like James Bond, we literally wouldn't have the modern day action movies edited the way that they are without the James Bond movies. And so I wonder, I mean, this is maybe too much of a bigger thing question, and maybe not for this episode specifically about Diamonds Are Forever, but I do wonder if that plays into that, if that feeds into that idea that they still thought of themselves as something that could push the envelope, because they weren't necessarily being like, hey, we have to sanitize this for every member of the audience the way that certain comic book movies do nowadays. But I'll take that elsewhere.
No, I 100% agree. That's what I don't want. I don't want the McDonald's Happy Meal version of James Bond. I want there to be some interesting flavors in there. Not that
Absolutely.
I like a Big Mac as much as anybody, but you don't want a Big Mac every time you go to the cinema, do you? I'm mixing
Absolutely.
metaphors here, but you know what I mean.
I got you. All right. Why don't we open up the dossier on Diamonds Are Forever, and let's talk a little bit about the movie itself.
We start with What Else? Connery's gun barrel sequence, something we will be seeing for the last time, and that hat too. We widen out to serene Japan, where Bond roughs up a man while searching for Blofeld. He gets an answer from the dubbed voice saying Cairo. Smash cut to an Egyptian casino. A man there says, "Hit me," and Bond obliges, still in the hunt for Blofeld. The man, also dubbed, answers, "Marie." Bond finds Marie on a rocky coast, tells her there's something he'd like to get off her chest, and then proceeds to strangle her with her own bikini top until she tells him where Blofeld is.
I love that that's the first time we see Connery. Like the two other people he's roughing up, you don't really see Connery's face, but the Marie part is, and it's like, and of course he's doing his favorite Connery occupation, roughing up a woman.
I mean, if it's going to be your last film, you got to put it on the permanent record.
Yeah, I guess so. Oof. Also the dubbing, I've never understood the dubbing in the, like, literally the guy in Japan, his mouth doesn't even move, and it's like Cairo. Like, yeah.
I do think the Marie part is the part for me which makes me the most uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not alone on this, so you may be aware. So the version of the MPAA here, which we have here in the UK, is called the BBFC. the British Board of Film Classification. They re-rated Diamonds Are Forever on home video. They actually rated it upwards.
Oh, wow.
So it went from PG to a 12 here in the UK. So if you buy it on DVD, it is a 12. And there's actually a really interesting podcast on the I think it's actually on the BBFC website where they talk about this. And one of the reasons was the stereotypical portrayal of Winton Kid, and the other major reason was the way that he treats Marie in that pre-title sequence, which, to be honest, is pretty unforgivable.
It's brutal. Like it really
Yeah.
is. And it's I hate to like it's shot in a way that is implied that it's also meant to titillate. And I think
Yeah.
that's the really like terrifying part of
totally.
it, because he is being awful.
Yeah, like, it's usually the sexual violence in these movies that gets me more than anything else, because it is just brutal, and that's how you open a movie, I guess.
Yeah.
Woo!
I sort of justify in my head, do a bit of mental gymnastics, because in a sense, you sort of, in my head, although it doesn't make the direct parallel, it's pretty clear that he's really angry
Yes.
about Blofeld, and Marie must be an agent of Spectre and something. But the fact that he strangles her with her bikini top, and you can interpret that in God knows how many different ways, a symbol of femininity. Is it a reaction against that wave of feminism that was coming in? Or there's all of these possible meanings to it, but ultimately he's strangling a woman with a bikini, which is a pretty unforgivable act. But in my head, I sort of try to do those gymnastics to give him sort of motivation for being in such a awful mood. But it's still pretty bad.
It's funny you brought up in your review, actually, and I kind of left this out of the notes, even though if you're trying to apply continuity to the James Bond films, which I think at this point they kind of are, he is coming off the murder of his wife. He's coming off the murder of the love of his life, and he is going for revenge against Blofeld, even though this movie really kind of plays it fast and loose with why he's going for revenge against Blofeld. And so, yeah, you're right. There is an extreme, we are seeing James Bond at his most angry, at his least charming, and but you're right, because the movie wants to sort of eat its cake and have it too, and is not really acknowledging on Her Majesty's Secret Service, that it's kind of like, well, why is James Bond like this? But yeah, it's a tough sell either way, I think.
It is a tough sell, and there's nothing in the performances and really the screenplay to kind of join those dots with Tracy's death. Having said that, and I didn't come up with this, I think it was my friend Tom who observed this. This is the film in which he kills Blofeld 3 times.
Yeah, true.
So he does get his revenge repeatedly. So I'm not sure he really gets that much catharsis, but it's not like in the kind of psychological portrayal that we get in Quantum of Solace of someone bound up with inconsolable rage. But there is the fact that the story does have him killing Blofeld multiple times.
Yeah. Solid point. We're introduced to our new Blofeld, speaking of Blofeld, played this time by Dicko Henderson actor Charles Gray, who demands a plastic surgery procedure, presumably to change his appearance, even though when we last saw him, he was Telly Savalas, be done tonight. Sometime later, the doctor's putting mud all over the face of a man in a mud tub, actually mashed potatoes. And when they leave, one of the doctors reveals that he himself is actually James Bond. However, Mudman gets the jump on Bond when he raises a gun out of the brown goop. Bond thinks quickly, drowning the man in even more hot mud, pulls the body out, and uses a water gun to reveal it's not Blofeld at all.
Mashed potatoes really are the patron saint of movie props and design. Every time you see ice cream, it's probably mashed potatoes. I love that they are also mud baths. I would love a potato bath, to be clear.
This was actually a huge bane of the film's existence, because they left them out for multiple days during the shoot. Yes. And it
I
smelled.
bet they added the milk and the butter to that too.
It smelled real bad.
And although the novel bears very little resemblance to this, there are those little details. So there is a horrible sequence in the novel where someone is scalded by the villain's henchmen. They are. It's actually Winton Kid who do it. They are scalded in a mud bath. So you can see that some of the bits from the Fleming book seep their way into the screenplay.
And that bit took place in Saratoga, which I was like, that's the Saratoga I know.
The moldy mashed potato version.
Yep.
There we go. Blofeld enters with 2 armed guards, making mud pies 007, he quips. That was great. I love it. Blofeld says the man would have been him in a matter of days and sends his guards to search Bond. One guard gets his hand caught in a convenient pocket mousetrap gadget. Honestly, brilliant.
Brilliant.
Love it. Gonna start doing that. The second succumbs to Bond's expertly thrown scalpels. He then gets the upper hand on Blofeld, ties him to a gurney, and kicks that gurney into more steaming hot mud. Bond cranks up the heat as Blofeld sinks under into the mud, and Bond gets the last words with, "Welcome to hell, Blofeld."
Which once again feels like if you're building off of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, that feels like, yeah, like he's finally got him.
Mm-hmm.
Blofeld's cat cries over her dead owner. I do love that truly feels like that. It's like, oh, that cat is sad. And we jump from her diamond collar to a classic Maurice Binder open, including nude women, diamonds aplenty, and Blofeld's fluffy white feline. All the while, Bassy croons Diamonds Are Forever, genuinely one of the best Bond songs, especially that funky bass that kicks in at the end.
Love it. Should be noted, I also have a fluffy white friend sitting on my lap, so maybe I'm the Blofeld of this podcast.
I've been saying it.
You're on it. Back in England, M informs Bond that now that he has had his revenge, he's expected to actually work. No fun. But especially on the newest case involving diamond smuggling. Bond shows off his drinking prowess by naming the year of a glass of sherry he is served, as he and M are briefed about the smuggling op.
Pity about your liver, sir. It's an unusually fine Solera. 51, I believe.
There is no year for sherry, 007.
I was referring to the original vintage on which the sherry is based, sir. 1851.
During the briefing, we are shown how miners smuggle diamonds from South African mines in their mouths, only to be retrieved by a dentist working for the baddies.
I only brought up the sherry thing because there are no years on sherry, and that joke plays out in the movie because Bond is like, no, I'm basing it off the year of the wine. Like, I guess that was a real thing Tom Mankiewicz thought, and somebody corrected him. They're like, there's no years on sherry, and so he wrote this into the script, and I just really love how much it annoys M. Bernard Lee killing it.
This is definitely the start of the know-it-all Bond, which reaches its peak in Roger Moore territory, where he seems to he's basically a walking Wikipedia by the time we get to Roger Moore. But this is where this is really where I mean, you get a hint of it in Goldfinger with an overdose of Bombois, and that's, but this is really where that kicks in. But you're right, it's to set up the later joke. There was actually a deleted scene. It's on the DVDs and stuff where Bond tastes wine and offers some notes in the middle of the film in Las Vegas when he has dinner with Pete Plenty O'Toole, which would have sustained the joke. But I think we just get the idea that James Bond knows enough about wine to know when he's being served by a sommelier or not.
It's really funny because the film Bond, it now at this point in the movies, to me, is much more knowledgeable. Like we encountered this in You Only Live Twice too, how he's like, oh, I know Japanese, whereas in the book of You Only Live Twice, he has can't be bothered, and so it's really funny that he is slowly slipping into, as you said, like a walking talking Wikipedia. But I kind of love that. That's seduce me with your brain, 007. We're then introduced to homosexual assassins Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, gushing about the killing prowess of the Scorpion in the desert. Mr. Wint picks up the Scorpion, and they meet their diamond dentist, who's a bit homophobic. And while Mr. Kidd fakes a toothache, Mr. Wint slips the Scorpion down the doctor's back. Curious how everyone who touches those diamonds seems to die, Mr. Wint says, before they hand off what looks like the diamond case to a helicopter pilot. The helicopter blows up, and Wint and Kidd take off hand in hand into the desert. Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd are next at a school run by Mrs. Whistler, where they deposit the diamonds.
And my note, when I saw this scene playing out, I'm like, He looks and sounds exactly like his son. The voice is uncanny.
Oh,
Like
Bruce Glover?
yeah, Bruce and Crispin. I'm like, it was one of those, like, I had to pause and I'm like, wait a minute.
I that was one of those things where, like, when the first Charlie's Angels movie came out in 2000, I was already, like, a big James Bond fan at that
Mhm.
point, and Crispin playing the Thin Man in those movies,
Yes.
I was like, "Oh, I like this, like, kinda James Bond-y tie," and then they never let him speak, but
Rude. Bond is informed that he is to head to Holland to take the place of a diamond smuggler named Pete Franks. Miss Moneypenny meets him at customs and informs him his passport is in order. She requests he return with an engagement ring. He asks would she settle for a tulip before speeding off to a hovercraft ferry.
a bit rude of Moneypenny. Just if we're really to assume that this is the same James Bond whose wife just recently died.
Oh, and yet they still had chemistry when they
Oh,
were
yes.
not even in the same room together, technically.
Mr. Franks, your passport is quite in order.
Well, anyone seeing you in that outfit, Moneypenny, would most certainly be discouraged from leaving the country. What can I bring you back from Holland?
A diamond? In a ring?
It's one of my favorite Moneypenny scenes.
It's great.
And the fact that you then get one of my favorite versions of the James Bond theme, which is but overlaid over quite an unsexy shot of a hovercraft.
Yes.
It's just like, okay, a hovercraft's pretty cool, but it's dirty. The shot is like, it's not the greatest weather because it's Britain, it's Dover, and it's like, it doesn't look. There's a lot of this film that just does not look remotely glamorous, or it's supposed to look glamorous, but it's like it's got the sheen taken off everything. But then you've got this really incredibly sexy wailing version of the Bond theme, and it's just like even this is kind of like sexed up by the music, and it's that's why I think this film leaves you feeling a little bit dirty because it's a bit like this is supposed to be sexy and it sort of is, but it also isn't.
You didn't think the fairy was sexy?
It's so funny. I love thinking about the idea that like part of the charm of these films too is they're showing people things that like maybe they wouldn't get to see. And I'm thinking about like Middle America looking at this giant hovercraft ferry and being like, oh my God, but you're absolutely right, David. It looks gross. It does not look cool at all. In Holland, a tourist boat just happens to pass police retrieving the body of Mrs. Whistler from the canal. Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd aren't far off, admiring their handiwork. Bond arrives in Amsterdam and rings the bell of Miss Tiffany Case. Tiffany greets Bond in her underwear after he makes himself a drink. They have a small back and forth, and she dusts his glass for fingerprints. She then examines the print against that of Peter Franks, using a giant machine in her closet, and they seem to match. I love this idea that, like, I mean, Tiffany, I guess, is, like, kind of working for Spectre, maybe? This is where the plot, like, gets a little confusing for me, too, because she is supposed to be getting those diamonds to Blofeld, technically. And so I'm guessing that's where the money comes for her gadgets, but I was like, she has a giant fingerprint machine in her closet? Very
I mean, she
casual.
has hobbies. She's working freelance, obviously.
True.
It's probably best that we don't investigate the plot of Diamonds Forever too much.
True.
But I never questioned it the first 15 times I saw this film. But you're right. It's like, who's Tiffany working for?
Yeah.
Does Blofeld actually employ Winton Kidd? Because they're waiting in the basement of the building to take Bond to the pipeline, but we never actually see them together. So it's never quite clear. But I think there's something quite modern about that in a way. Like, I think Tiffany is like a freelancer. She doesn't know who's hired her. She doesn't really know what she's doing. She's just doing it for the money. She's very mercenary about it. But I love the scene where she and Bond meet. It's such a long scene, actually. For a Bond film, it's not. There's actually less action in this film than a lot of other Bond movies, and I would argue that something like You Only Live Twice became too action focused, and I think there wasn't enough, interesting character interaction. Whereas this, it's that game they're playing with each other around Tiffany's apartment. I find it so exciting, this scene, even though it is essentially just two people talking in a room.
In terms of Bond women, like she gets a lot of flack, I think, from a lot of people because of a third act sort of turn towards not quite as intelligent. I actually quite like Tiffany Case though. I think she's really spunky. I really love Jill St. John's performance. I get that like I've also heard a lot of people be like, well, she is a little shrill, which like is sexist language anyways. But but I think like what they're implying is she's very American. But
Oh.
so am I. So like,
No, she's one of my favorites, and yeah, it is the beginning of the Guy Hamilton, what I call the bikini trilogy. So at the end, so at the end of this one, and at the end of Man with Golden Gun, and there is definitely a bikini in Living. Oh, it's when it's with Rosie Carver.
yes.
But particularly in this one and Man with the Golden Gun, both of the heroines end up being rendered powerless by being put into a bikini for no real plot reasons. And but at the same time, Tiffany does. Yeah, she doesn't do a fat lot in the finale. She should really be a better shot than that, probably. And she sort of messes things up a little bit. And Britt Eklund in Man with the Golden Gun ends up almost killing Bond with her butt,
Yes.
as a bikini butt activates the laser while Bond's standing over it, sort of thing. But
That is a beautiful sentence
yeah,
you just said.
yeah.
Beautiful. Dressed, Case tells him that his job is to smuggle 50,000 carats of diamonds. Back at his hotel, Bond phones Q to thank him for the fake fingerprints. As you do, you gotta be polite. Q informs Bond that the real Peter Franks has escaped custody, and before he can tell him more, Bond is gone, leaving Q to hang up in disgust at Bond's rudeness. I love a salty Q.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
always salty, always upset.
That's why we're the Q division. Like
We are.
if there's one character we always identify with. Also, I just love the casualness of like, oh yeah, Peter Frank's escape. He like killed a guard. Good luck. Like,
Beautiful.
Franks arrives at Tiffany's place where Bond is pretending to make out with himself on the street. Classic Connery. Bond and Franks enter the building, and Bond attempts to subdue Franks in the tiny classic ornate elevator. Every swing seems to break a new pane of glass. Franks almost decapitates Bond, but Bond gets the upper hand, blinds Franks with fire extinguisher foam, and throws him over the railing to his doom. David, you called it out right away. This movie was so light on action that they created this elevator sequence so there would at least be a scene in which James Bond throws fists earlier in the film.
Yeah, it's such a great fight. It's obviously supposed to recall the earlier fight with Red Grant in the train carriage and From Which We Love. So you're certainly in close confidence. Funnily enough, my friend Sam has actually just his workplace have opened an office. He lives in Manchester, but his workplace have opened an office in London. And he was delighted to discover that the office building has that elevator in it. It's actually where they shot it.
Oh my
So
God.
that sequence is actually shot in London. I'm sure that doesn't surprise anybody. But a lot of the stuff was done on location in Amsterdam. When I visited Amsterdam a couple of years ago, I couldn't, of course, resist recreating making out with myself at the base of those stairs. The occupants of the building had no idea that Diamonds Are Forever was filmed there. So I tried to explain to them. I didn't know any Dutch, but I tried to explain to them in English that I was recreating this scene from 1971's Diamonds Are Forever. But they didn't really understand why this strange British guy was snogging himself on the street.
For funsies, obviously.
Absolutely. And like obviously I think if you've listened to the Q Division long enough, you know that you've probably watched these movies before listening to these episodes. If you have not, highly recommend going and finding that scene. It's really, if you want to know what we mean by making out with themselves, like it's one of those like oldest tricks in the book, but works for Connery.
Beautiful. Bond drags the corpse into Tiffany's apartment where she rifles through his pockets to discover, after Bond planted his ID on Frank's, she discovers James Bond's Playboy Club membership card, recognizing the name as if Bond is a celebrity, and says they have to split with the diamonds, which she got from Mrs. Whistler. They load the diamonds into a plane in the coffin of the real Franks, and Bond and Case are off to Los Angeles with Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd in tow. Kidd remarks that Case is pretty attractive for a lady, much to Wint's displeasure. Honestly, rude.
They're both aboard. I must say, Miss Case seems quite attractive. For a lady.
I will say, people shouldn't recognize a spy. That is
Yeah.
my one critique. He is not a famous person.
We ran into that issue. God, I feel like it's just been building, but we ran into that issue, I think, in the 67 Casino Royale as well, too, where everybody's kind of like, James Bond. And it's like, no, you shouldn't know who this is. If he's doing his job well, you shouldn't know who this is.
That's why they change his face?
That's also the pretext for You Only Live Twice, though. So that's why they kill him off at the start. So that he could
Exactly.
act more undercover. But it's never really confirmed how the world gets to know who James Bond is. I suppose the spy community gets to know him. But then again, every hotel manager, wine waiter, bartender in the world knows his drink order and room preferences. So
Was he in an
yeah.
issue of Playboy at this time? Is that how it happened? Is that why his membership card?
There's a whole Bond connection with Playboy. Some of the short stories appeared in Playboy before anywhere else, and even up till fairly recently. And obviously Hugh Hefner was a massive fan. There was some other connections with the people behind the scenes. So there was actually, there's been a long-standing connection with Playboy. So I think it does sort of fit that Bond would be a member.
He'd be a great Playboy bunny, let's be real.
I don't know if you could get Connery in those ears. I think he'd be very upset. Bond and Case are separated at the airport, where Bond runs into our fourth Felix Leiter of the Eon Bond films. Leiter, disguised as a customs official, warns Bond that there's some gangsters ready to meet him, and asks where the diamonds are on the corpse. Bond replies, "Alimentary, my dear," meaning they put them down his throat. Leiter sends him on his way in the suspicious hearse with the mobsters. I only mention that because I don't remember if it was Broccoli or Saltzman who hated that line, because it's like too
It's Broccoli, yeah.
Broccoli. It's too cerebral, and I think there's this really funny story about going to the premiere, and like a bunch of people in the front row laughed specifically at that line, and Broccoli responded with, "Big deal, they're doctors."
I will say, this Felix, I was trying to figure out who it was because I'm like, I know this person. And that's why I'm using this mug today. It is Natalie's dad from The Facts of Life, and I got so
No way.
excited.
I know you're a huge Facts of Life fan. I did not know that.
Yeah, I was like, I know him from somewhere. And then I'm like, of course, it's his one episode of The Facts of Life.
Natalie, that's amazing. She's one of my favorites. So
Oh, so good. Eric. They drive Bond to a funeral home in Nevada. A real funeral home, but the interiors are all classic Ken Adams soundstage affairs. The casket is sent into the crematorium, and Bond is given an urn full of the diamonds. Bond is then to deliver the diamonds to their final resting place until he is brained by Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd. The assassins load him into the crematorium oven, and as the casket starts to burn, Bond wakes up. It looks like it's curtains for our secret agents until the casket is opened and Bond is cussed out because the diamonds he brought are fakes. I love this whole sequence.
You dirty double-crossing limey think those goddamn diamonds are phonies.
No, don't tell me. You're St. Peter?
I will say, for the most part, unlike Hamilton's last turn, Bond is actually very good at his job in this movie, except for this part of the film. That like he literally gets by this, like the skin of his teeth, by the fact that this mobster pulls him out and cusses him out, which I think is truly a funny scene.
I think this was the last scene shot in the whole film.
Yes.
And you can tell they're just having so much fun with it. It's so dark and weird. I mean, you could say that Diamonds Are Forever is just weird all the way through. But this scene is particularly unsettling, but also also absolutely hilarious.
And it's especially fitting that supposedly Connery's last scene is him being loaded into a coffin and sent on his way.
Poetic.
Bond says if he is paid real money, he'll give them the real diamonds, and heads to the Hotel Tropicana in Las Vegas, where he's informed by Leiter that Q has just arrived in Vegas with the real gems. Bond also notices that his mobster from the previous scene, Shady Tree, is a stand-up comedian at the White House, a hotel owned by millionaire Willard White.
Also, I need the bathtub jump James Bond was soaking in when he made this realization. It is beautiful. Put it in my home.
From a queer point of view, I'm just like, how many... whenever people say James Bond is this paragon of masculinity, I'm like,
Yeah.
have you seen the... And it was actually used as a publicity photo as well. James Bond in a giant bubble bath, drinking martini, reading a magazine. I'm like, if this is... I know masculinity and femininity are stupid constructs anyway, but, you know, if this is, you know, this is hyper masculinity, I'm like, are you looking at the same character I'm looking at?
Well, and that's part of the great dichotomy of James Bond in general, because we even mentioned this in our very first episode, which was just our introduction episode. A lot of the things James Bond into are very classically, and like you said, gender constructs,
Yeah.
stupid, doesn't matter, but they're classically queer-coded things.
Yeah.
Like, he loves fine food, he loves fine drinks, he loves vacationing, like, all these things that people associate that are like quote-unquote queer are all his tastes. And yet you're right, he's often held up as like this pillar of masculinity. And I gotta say, like, I'm always happy to have Sean Connery's shirt off, absolutely, but I will say, like, this is his least built movie, like, in terms of like his body, and it's kind of refreshing to see that, because it's like, oh, this is just Sean Connery did not give a fuck, and he was just like, you're getting what you're getting. And
I hate it when people shame Connery's dad bod in
Oh,
this
it's so good.
film. You know,
No, his bod
yeah,
is the
I know.
ideal. Let's be real. Like,
Yeah.
So
however,
sexy in
whatever you
this
think of him
film.
personally, it's like, no, he is
Oh
hot.
yeah, I think it was probably because in Doctor No, you know, only 9 years before, you
Right.
actually look and he's got abs, whereas clearly the food and drink has disguised those. By the time we get to Diamonds Are Forever, but I absolutely hate that idea, and you know, it's usually people who make those criticisms who are, I don't know, hating on themselves. Is it some kind of internalized whatever's going on there psychologically? But I'm like, are you watching the same film I am? Because, you know, abs are abs, but Connery's hot in this film.
Yeah.
He's also actually strong. I just need people to know, if you see somebody with like a 24 pack, they are not actually strong. The strongest people you
Totally.
know are not like chiseled like
Mhm.
that.
Right.
Mhm.
At the casino in the hotel, Bond catches a bit of Tree's show, which is also being watched by Winton Kidd. The assassins pay a visit to Tree, but they are informed too late that Tree is supposed to be kept alive as Bond finds Tree's body.
I love a good whoopsie.
Yeah, they're just kind of like, oh, well.
Bond hits the craps table where he meets Plenty O'Toole, who offers to roll for him. She immediately loses. White is informed that Peter Franks is in the building, and Bond takes over the craps game and wins $50,000. He gives Plenty $5,000, and she invites him to a drink. Next thing we know, she's in his hotel suite.
I love the, like, Plenty O'Toole, like, I'm Plenty, I'm sure you are. O'Toole, named after your father, of course. Like, that is Mankiewicz. that is absolutely Mankiewicz. Bond undresses her, but before they consummate their relationship, a bunch of mobsters throw her from the window. O'Toole lands in a pool, and Bond compliments their aim. I didn't know there was a pool down there, the head mobster retorts before Bond hits him. The mobsters retreat, and Bond finds Tiffany Case in his bed.
I'm afraid you've caught me with more than my hands up.
Hey, what the hell is this? A pervert's convention or something? Hey, listen, you can't do this to me. Stop that! I've got friends in this town!
Exceptionally fine shot.
I didn't know there was a pool down there.
Yeah, I did see where Lana Wood was very upset with this scene.
Yes.
And like how it was filmed, the amount of people who had to see her, just how nude she was once she got wet. She was pretty upset, like, still talks about it however many decades later.
Well, because they promised her that nobody would see it because they're like, we're shooting it at 2 a.m., but it's Las Vegas. Nobody goes to bed. So,
Yeah.
like,
They can clear
It does.
this Las Vegas strip for like a car chase, but they can't clear a pool apparently.
It does. This scene does contain my husband's favorite line of dialogue in the whole film. Is this a pervert's convention or something? Like, actually, a bit of, Lana would probably agree with that being an assessment of the real life filming situation. Yeah, but again, it's such a dark scene because it's like hilarious and a bit sexy, but then also really horrible because you think she's actually going to be thrown to her death.
right. It's wild.
Ugh. Case wants to know where the diamonds actually are as Bond gets undressed. Smash cut to after sex. Case tells him that she can protect Bond if he's willing to split the diamonds 50-50. He tells her the diamonds are at the circus in the Circus Hotel. While she's there, Bond and Leiter spy on her from above. A card is dealt to Case at a blackjack table telling her to play the water balloons. Her balloons instantly pop, and as she gets her stuffed animal, a child complains the game was rigged for her. All this happens, and also a real elephant plays a slot machine and wins.
I love that throwaway gag because it's the most ridiculous. Like, why? Why are we doing this? But I love it.
Because they could.
Yeah.
They're like, they saw an elephant and they're like, turn the camera. I do love that the child is complaining the game is rigged.
Oh, that
Like,
the child's all of us.
Joke's on you, all carnival type games are rigged.
Case catches that she's being followed in a mirror and heads to a horror show where they claim a woman will turn into an ape. It's a dumb gag, and the racial undertones are pretty horrific. The ape, quote unquote, escapes, and Case runs out the back, losing the men tailing her. Felix informs Bond that Case slipped them, but by the time she gets back to her Vegas home, Bond is waiting for her. She's pissed at that the diamonds were faked, and now her black wig is in the pool, which is actually the body of Plenty O'Toole having been drowned by Wint and Kidd. Poor Lana Wood, like literally, like barely in this movie, twice in the pool. Like,
Has talked a lot about how she filmed so many more scenes and they just weren't in there.
David
Like,
mentioned that there's like a whole deleted dinner sequence and everything.
There's so many scenes from Las Vegas that never made it into the movie, like the cameo of Sammy Davis Jr. and all of that stuff. I think they were having so much fun in Vegas. I know the shoot was, as we said, had budgetary constraints, but because they had they had a free pass in so many of the locations, including the ones owned by Howard Hughes, because he just asked for a copy of the film when they were done. He was a friend of Albert Broccoli. I think they were having so much fun in Vegas that they just kept making up scenes. It's like probably the closest we've got to like a semi-improv Bond film. This sequence in the middle of the film in Las Vegas, it's got this kind of weird tone to itself. And of course, the whole time Bond himself is a bit of a fish out of water in this sequence, which a lot of people don't talk about enough, because he's wearing a tuxedo in a Vegas casino, but that doesn't fit in a Vegas casino at all. So there is this weird tone to the whole film, but particularly this Las Vegas sequence, because it's not really Bond's milieu.
Which is funny because I think people mentally put James Bond and Vegas sort of in a similar, but yeah, you're right. Like I've been to Vegas, I hate it. And it's very much that. It's very kitschy. Not quite the like Monte Carlo casinos. I think people.
I was gonna say Vegas is America white trash personified.
It really is.
It really is.
Sorry to any of our listeners that are in Vegas, but I've been there and I was
been there
not for
several
me.
times. My opinion's never changed. Bond isn't getting the answers he wants, and in Connery fashion, slaps Tiffany for the information she has. Tiffany brings Bond to the airport where they see the diamonds are given to Bert Saxby, who runs the White House Hotel and Casino. Case tells Bond that no one has seen White in 3 years. Bond is able to get into the back of the van carrying the diamonds and is brought to a secret lab owned by White. This feels like a Howard Hughes joke, though.
It is. 100% is. I also like the idea, like we've complained so much about the like obvious, like, hey, why don't you look at the secret island or the volcano that's erupting that hasn't erupted in my lifetime? This feels like, because of Howard Hughes, feels like actually like, oh, she's like, Willard White hasn't been seen in 3 years. And it's like, that's helpful information that I wouldn't have thought of, because like a lot of reclusive millionaires in Vegas, apparently.
Him and Deborah Vance.
Yes. Bond fakes his way in by charming a scientist who outfits him with a personal Geiger counter. He then assumes the identity of the scientist and gets the information he needs about the satellite they're building there right before his cover is blown. He then finds himself on a soundstage where they're possibly faking the moon landing. He gets inside a lunar buggy and crashes his way out, which leads to a car chase. Bond's still in his buggy and headed towards the desert. Bond escapes the buggy and the pursuing guards, only to backtrack and steal a three-wheeler from one of the guards who has crashed out.
Three-wheelers are fun, y'all.
I love
there are so many sentences when you actually kind of iron out the synopsis of Diamonds Are Forever. It's like when you're watching the film, even though it feels weird, it sort of makes sense, and then you actually put it into words like you're doing there, and you're just like, this film is absolutely bonkers.
It's like when I describe soap opera storylines with a straight face, and you're like, how did they manage to switch the babies?
Well, that's the thing. Like, when it gets to the lab in the desert, I'm always like, oh yeah, we're in a James Bond film. Like, there hasn't been something like this in the movie yet. The closest you've got is that like really wild funeral home, which, by the way, once again, just to backtrack, that is a real funeral home, and Kenton Adams was able to like look at that and like extrapolate like this really crazy interior just by judging from the crazy exterior that actually exists. But yeah, like this is the moment I'm like, oh yeah, we're in a James Bond movie. And then, they fake the moon landing. Whatever.
Of course.
In just a few years, James Bond will go to space anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Bond reunites with Case, and they speed away back to the downtown Las Vegas. The police give chase, and after several car crashes and an escape down a narrow alleyway, causing Bond to tip the car one way and then somehow back to the other direction, the two escape to the bridal suite of the White House Hotel and Casino.
We talked about that continuity error earlier, but it's wild.
As editors, wouldn't you just suggest flipping the footage?
The problem with that is there's so much signage in the actual shot, and the matting to replace that signage would not have looked
So
very
much
good back
time.
then. Yeah,
Okay.
that's literally my answer. I love that you like activated the analytical part of my brain. I'm like, but yeah, like that. It is really funny that they had to shoot it 3 times, and that was part of the reason that they fucked it up, is because the third time they just shot it tipping the wrong direction.
Whoops.
Later arrives and tells Bond that getting to White is impossible. He provides them with a security detail, and Bond leaves Case wrapped in a fur on a bed/fish tank so he can sneak into White's apartment at the top of the hotel. He uses a grappling gun built into his suit to scale to the top and drops right into White's private video chamber, complete with toilet paper. White, who is watching, tells him to get rid of his gun and leads him to his penthouse, where it's revealed that White is Blofeld. But wait, is Bond seeing double? There's a second Blofeld there too. That fish tank bed looks so uncomfortable. I was like,
Is the again, if you're a fan, it was apparently really uncomfortable.
I believe
but
it.
if you've not seen, if you've ever wanted to see James Bond's bottom, the one and only time it's ever appeared on film appears in the deleted scenes in Diamonds Are Forever. So if you want to
Googling
check out
now.
Sean's butt, they are there on the Blu-ray and DVD releases of Diamonds Forever.
Beautiful.
So they were going to push the envelope and do some more male nudity. It would, we still haven't gone there.
I love that. Blofeld tells Bond he killed his only other double, and volunteers had been scarce since. Blofeld then shows Bond he can speak with accurate mimicry in the voice of White, using a transistor implanted in his neck. Blofeld reveals he kidnapped White, and while Bond complains he's not sure which Blofeld to kill, he kicks Blofeld's cat and shoots the one who stands up to catch it. This is the part where I was cheering for the villains, by the way. The cat runs away, only to be greeted with another duplicate cat as well. Blofeld says, "Right idea, Mr. Bond, but wrong pussy," Bond replies.
I do so enjoy our little visits, Mr. Bond. However potentially painful they may be. But I'm afraid this one has come to an end.
What do you intend to do with those diamonds?
An excellent question. And one which will be hanging on the lips of the world quite soon. If I were to break the news to anyone, it would be to you first, Mr. Bond. You know that. But it's late, I'm tired, and there's so much left to do.
There's a great article by The Independent that was written by Jeffrey McNabb that came out in 2021, where he references the second cat showing up as the moment James Bond truly slipped into camp. And while I disagree, because I think we've been building towards this forever, I do think that is so funny to me that, like, not only is Blofeld like, I'm activating doubles, I have a double cat for each of them as well.
This is how you know he's gay, because Barbara Streisand cloned her dogs.
Yes.
My husband keeps saying if we ever win the lottery, we're going to clone our cats.
Yes.
Do it.
Yeah. So
Call
that's
Barbara's person.
There's an amazing shot where Blofeld's on the phone and the cat is having its dinner right on the desk right next to him. So he's on the phone and the cat's just eating there. And I'm just like, yes, I am a Bond villain, because that's what I would do.
When he kicked that cat, I was like, fuck James Bond. I was like, come on, what are you doing, man? Rude. Blofeld lets Bond leave in his elevator, which Bond correctly guesses is a trap, and he is immediately gassed. His unconscious body is then collected by Wint and Kidd, with Wint accidentally dropping his cologne in the trunk that they stuff him in. They then drive Bond to the desert and load him into a pipe piece that is set to be added to an underground pipeline. The next morning, the pipe is buried, and Bond awakes in his round steel coffin with only a rat to keep him company. Bond realizes he's covered in Wint's cologne, and he's also about to be killed by a device that travels down the pipe. He then short-circuits the machine and is rescued by two workers who open the pipe to fix the device. Love that moment. Love when he's like, I was just out walking my pet rat, and I got a bit lost. So good.
Very Paige Kaiser coded. If anybody knows my co-host, she loves rats. Bond, pretending to be Bert Saxby, then calls Blofeld pretending to be White, telling him Bond is alive. This is aided by Q using a voice changer device on the phone. Blofeld tells Bond to head to White's summer house where he is keeping him to have him killed. Bond compliments Q on his device, and Q says he built one for his kids for Christmas. Felix and James head for the house, and Blofeld, realizing that something is wrong, pushes all his plans forward 24 hours.
I do just want to say, I wrote his kids. Actually, the movie, he just says built one for the kids for Christmas. So if we're still keeping up the illusion that Q is queer-coded, like, that's fine. It doesn't have to be his kids.
It can be his drag daughters, we'll just say.
It depends on which. There are so many Qs. I was thinking this. I was rereading a Raymond Benson book where he gives him a wife as well, but there are so many Qs. So yeah, all possibilities are still open.
Bond heads into the summer house alone, where he's met by White security, two acrobatically trained brawlers who go by the names Bambi and Thumper.
I'm Bambi.
Good morning, Bambi.
And I'm Thumper. Is there something we can do for you?
I can think of several things offhand, but at the moment I'm looking for Willard White.
They beat the crap out of Bond and toss him into a pool to try and drown him.
Good for them.
Somehow Bond gets the upper hand long enough for Felix and his men to run in. Thumper relents, and they reveal White is in the house below the house, where they rescue him. There is no way that Bond gets the upper hand in this fight. Like, literally, they knock him into water, and he somehow, like, manages to hold them both. They are too competent for that. I call bullshit on this. I think Bambi and Thumper probably would have been the end of Bond in real life.
Yes, they are gymnasts. They could kick his ass in real life, and honestly, on screen, they're probably better in water than he is.
I love how much they actually put him through the ringer, too. Like, they beat the crap out of him.
Good for them. Back at the casino, Q is cheating at slots and using a ring device that lets him win. He begins to explain the device to Tiffany Case.
That's unbelievable!
An electromagnetic RPM controller. Been aching to give it a try.
You see, pressure on the case here when the desired symbols appear. This causes the rotation of the cylinders to stutter at just the precise moment needed to...
When she notices a suspiciously tall woman walking through the casino holding a white, fluffy cat. Case chases the woman outside and is shoved into a cart with Blofeld in full high drag. Honestly, better drag makeup than half the contestants who've been on Drag Race.
Well, well, well. Look what the cat dragged in. I'm delighted to meet you, Miss Case. I'd so dreaded the prospect of making this tedious journey alone.
Do you know, David, I did not... I should start checking out deleted scenes. I have all these on Blu-ray. I don't know why I'm not. Is there more with Blofeld and drag? Because that's a lot of drag.
No, there isn't, sadly. And if I remember correctly, it was sort of a last-minute decision, which is why it is sort of a bit thrown together in the parlance of RuPaul quick drag.
I was going to say quick drag challenge, got it.
Yeah, it's very much quick drag challenge. And I think it was just, again, they were there in Las Vegas, anything goes. We've got, there are so many plot holes in this second to third act transition. Let's not even go there. Like, who's employing Bambi and Thumper? Is it Willow White? Is it Blofeld? It doesn't make any sense. And then you've got Blofeld having to escape the casino, but why not? With all these resources, there are much better ways to do it. Why bother sneaking out in drag? Does he do it to get Tiffany to come with him? Whatever. But I obviously live for Blofeld in drag. This is the moment, actually. This is where this is one of the things that motivated me to do what I do, because I kept reading the same opinions recycled over and over again, like Blofeld is, diminished by being put in drag, people ignorant of the whole history of drag and how empowering it can be and all those sorts of things. This was always one of those scenes I had in mind where I was like, right, okay, this is where we set the record straight, or not so straight, about, there are so many different ways to interpret James Bond films, because it's always been, I think it's a brilliant moment, to be honest. It makes no sense from a plot point of view, but it's a fantastic, brilliantly weird moment.
It's so funny that people would think that that is like a negative thing when clearly Blofeld is living.
Sometimes you just have to have a good time.
Exactly.
I'm going to start the rumor that Robin Williams and Nathan Lane's characters love this Bond movie, and that's what inspired the end of The Birdcage.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God, he does have a striking resemblance to Gene Hackman in drag. Bond brings
there's a whole separate thing about, I think so many Bond girls probably really kind of fall within the realm of drag as well. They're so hyper and all the rest of it. So there's definitely I think there's so much, and funnily enough, the most recent series of RuPaul's Drag Race, especially here in the UK, and I think the new US series, have leaned into the James Bond imagery.
Yes,
The posters in particular, and we have actually had a Bond girl challenge in the UK version of it as well. So there is definitely a James Bond RuPaul's Drag Race Venn diagram, and what happens in Diamonds Forever helps the overlap.
RuPaul saw this movie as a child and was like, I'm doing that.
Bond brings the CIA to the secret lab in the desert, but it has been cleared out. White is incensed that Blofeld has been impersonating him and tries to stop a satellite that he had set to launch. He's too late. The satellite launches, and White and Bond realize that Blofeld is now in charge of a giant space lasers created using the diamonds. I just want to put that part in to be like, that's what the diamonds have to do with this. That he can use to destroy the world's nuclear stockpile and use it to ransom the rest of the nuclear weapons to the highest bidder.
Okay, Tony Stark. Back at the hotel, it's revealed that Blofeld has escaped. Looking at the map and the floor of White's penthouse, Bond and White realize Blofeld is hiding in an oil rig off the coast of Baja California. Blofeld claims he's doing this for world peace and total disarmament. All of the dialogue in this section is very silly camp. Like, this should be a Drag Race reading challenge. You just can't laugh.
Yeah.
That's how you win.
Bond is airdropped to the rig and immediately taken into custody. Bond notices Case lounging on the deck before he is searched. Blofeld tells Bond he's correct. On Bond, they find a cassette of marching band music that he hoped to switch with Blofeld's cassette of satellite commands. Blofeld decides to give Bond the tour, but not before Case slips Bond the marching band cassette again. Blofeld tells her to put something over her bikini because he is totally straight, and Bond ejects the control tape and, using a bit of sleight of hand, replaces it with the marches. Blofeld demands that he be searched again, so Bond calls Case a bitch and slips the command tape into the bottom of her slightly less revealing bikini that she has slipped on. I love that he's like put on something less revealing and she puts on something that's equally as revealing, just as sleeves.
I feel like this is one of those moments where had they just made a different choice of which side to put the tape in, they all could have got away with this.
Yeah.
Yeah. While back on deck, Bond alerts his CIA contacts by releasing a red weather balloon and trying to slip past the guards. Case finds him and tells him she did it. She switched the tapes, and Bond calls her a stupid twit as she has put the real one back. This is unbelievable.
Well, this is, like I said, this is the sudden turn that suddenly Tiffany Case is like not smart. Where I think she's been kind of pretty smart the entire movie up until this point.
Yeah, no, it's like once you're actually interested in James Bond genuinely, you become dumb. I think that
Yes.
is the math that happens in these movies so far.
You get Bond-matized.
The CIA gathers their attack helicopters to head to the rig. The rig is prepared, however, and a full-out firefight occurs between the rig and the CIA. Case tries to switch the tape again, but Blofeld catches the cassette tape in the back of her shorts and tells his men to put her away just like Bond. Again, could have been avoided if the tape was in the front.
What's the line, David? The like basically like wonderful assets, too bad they're not brains, essentially.
Oh
or-
yeah, that's it. Tiffany, my dear, we're showing a bit more cheek than usual, aren't we? What a pity. Such nice cheeks too. If only they were brains.
Totally straight. Totally straight guy.
Totally straight.
Reading challenge winner right here.
Bond is able to escape his holding cell through a port at the bottom of the rig. Blofeld has himself loaded into a personal submarine as both Bond and Case watch, having been lost in the shuffle of the assault. Bond knocks out the man in the crane transporting the sub and then lifts the sub back aboard the rig. He then swings the subs back and forth before crashing it into the command center. Case falls off the side of the rig as she tries to provide cover fire for Bond, and he jumps after her, the satellite having failed when the submarine crashed into the command center. Bond and Case say goodbye to White and Leiter as they head back to Britain on a steamship. Little known to them, Wint and Kidd are also aboard. Case seems like she's about to propose when Wint and Kidd show up disguised as room service with a bomb hidden in a bomb surprise cake.
I mean, I love a surprise. What a great surprise birthday party.
Whenever I see a bomber on a menu in a restaurant, I know that's what I'll be having for dessert because of that scene.
It's sort of like the thing that I like for years I didn't understand the joke of this, and it's the Gremlins 2 thing with me where they go to Gremlins 2 and they order chocolate mousse and they bring over a giant molded chocolate mousse head, and I just for years was like, that must be what chocolate mousse is. I was a very dumb child.
To be fair, most children are dumb.
Yeah.
They are. Bond recognizes Wint's cologne and calls him out on not knowing his wine. Realizing they've been had, Kidd attacks with flaming skewers. Good for them. Bond uses the alcohol to light him on fire, and he goes over the side of the ship. Case then throws the bomb at Kidd, and James is able to subdue him, attach the bomb, and push him overboard. Finally, Tiffany finishes her thought saying, James, how do we get those diamonds down again?
I know the death of Kidd has always been of like some sort of the way that he pulls the tails between his legs and Kidd almost responds in like pleasure. I've never really seen that as like in my brain like a weird homophobic thing. I guess that maybe the implication is there. But yeah, I love that Wint and Kidd get sort of the last laugh before he kills them.
This is the scene which, yeah, I do take a homophobic reading to it, either because people just don't understand anatomy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just like, it's like, is he Bond supposed to be pleasuring his penis or his prostate or whatever? But there's
Right.
something going on there that, even though this obviously should be really painful, for some reason, gay men are different. And I think that's what it's playing into here. This is definitely the scene. This climactic scene is definitely what was upsetting for a lot of activist groups, particularly around this Bond film. I mean, when this film was originally shown on TV it was Christmas 1979. So back then it took
Oh,
8
wow.
years for a film to be released in cinemas, and then that window nowadays obviously is like a few weeks. But it was definitely this scene which it was actually Gay News did a whole article.
Oh, wow.
Am I allowed to use the F slur on this podcast?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
can self-censor. So they called there, and I've actually got a copy of this on an article I wrote called "Lustering On," about 50 years of Diamonds Are Forever, and it was actually my friend Dr. Llewellyn Chapman who found this in the archives. But the piece was written, "Burn, faggot, burn."
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so I'll read the first bit. It says, "No sooner will the flames have died down on your Christmas puddings than they are scheduled to burst out again in glorious technicolor on a gay brother. Roast faggot is what ITV," that's one of the biggest channels here in the UK, "Roast faggot is what ITV is promising Christmas Day audiences with a screening of the Sean Connery's James Bond movie Diamonds Forever. Two homosexual characters, Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, find themselves tipped into the hetero-machismo bondage world as baddies. What else? All ends happily for Bond fans in the last scene when gay Mr. Kidd goes up in a puff of smoke." So they weren't happy.
Yeah, I mean, I totally see that. That's whew. Yeah. Sometimes you need to word things pretty strongly to get the point
Yeah.
across. But yeah, it's so funny. And maybe I'm just blind to it, or maybe I'm too. It was a different time. Oh God, I'm using it now. It was a different time, and obviously, like, the rules were very different. So I wonder if I'm too complacent, and perhaps like, I'm putting the onus on myself on that one. Because, like, yeah, like, strongly worded, I don't disagree with any of it.
It makes me think that it's just one of those, like, stepping stone things in, like, the tropes that we now recognize, like how Disney queer-coded all their villains, but it's just that idea that queer men are just like, specifically because that was deep in the stereotype of media, that they are just deviants, they're very into
Right.
every sexual thing, it will distract them, even though we have seen this queer couple, up until this point, be very loving and devoted to each other, and we'll just call them shenanigans. So it's one of those, like, when you see this with the context of everything that also happens around and after, it's one of those, like, like, the idea is in there and just other people, like, ran with this idea.
This is exactly how we started this episode. Both things can coexist in our heads if we're after that nuance. We thinkers. We don't just take our first thought about this. I think it's a brilliantly constructed scene, a fantastic way to end the film. It's so well written, staged, performed, everything. It's such a brilliant payoff. And not all Bond films have a fantastic climactic, almost like a bonus scene to the whole
Yeah.
rest of the film, really. Because let's face it, the oil rig climax is probably not as climactic as it needs to be because they did run out of budget and time and everything else. So you need this at the end of the film, but I think it can still leave a sour aftertaste, but you can still enjoy the film. So it is almost like it is a bit of an unpleasant aftertaste for me when I finish watching this film, but that doesn't spoil my enjoyment, if that makes sense.
Mhm. And, like, it does remind you of, like, the Irma Bunt where she, like, is killed in a very similar, like, "Oh, gotcha now" scene at the very end, and James Bond turns it around on her.
Yeah. I do, and not to, like, belabor this point, but also, like, the death in the book is the death of Winton Kidd. The fact that he, like, makes it seem like a murder suicide is so melancholic in comparison, like, and like, I don't know. You know what? Straights should not be the arbiters of gay taste. That's
That's true.
that's what I'm getting.
As my friend has been calling them lately, those straggots need to stay in their lane.
We're finally treated at the very end of the credits with the end of Diamonds Are Forever and told James Bond will return in Live and Let Die. The end. I do want to get some final thoughts. I love talking about the women, of course. Tiffany Case, Plenty O'Toole, Bambi and Thumper. I've sort of said my piece about Tiffany Case. I really like her. I do think that she's sort of maligned in the history of Bond women because specifically because of what happens in the last 10 minutes. But I think up until that point, I think she's a really strong, interesting character. That exactly like you were saying, David, that opening scene, she is toe to toe with Bond and very much just like, okay, who are you? Like, I'm in charge of this operation. Like, you're not going to screw this up for me.
But it is in need of some soft lighting, and I know a little restaurant quite close.
I never mix business with pleasure.
Well, neither do I.
Good. Then we can start by saving the cute remarks until after you get the diamonds into Los Angeles.
Well, where are they now?
That's not your problem.
She's actually a lot of gay fans' favorite Bond girl. I did some research into this for it's actually going to appear in a book, hopefully out later this year.
Yes.
It's if anyone's interested, there's an article on License to Queer written, I think about 4 years ago, by a really great writer called Jack Bell, and Tiffany Case is his favorite Bond girl. And as a gay man, he sees a lot of parallels with how a lot of gay people have to be survivors or develop those abilities. And she's very much, she is a survivor in that story. She doesn't have the backstory of the novel, which I think is a bit kind of dodgy psychology. You know, she's having to overcome the trauma of sexual assault. I think that is a bit, you know, Fleming was interested in psychology but didn't know a fat lot about it.
Yes.
And which explains decisions like that. But I think the film's character improves upon the novel's character. And I think, you know, whatever you think about Jill St. John, you know, especially if you're Lana Wood, you know, she's so committed to portraying that character as a survivor who will do whatever it takes to keep her head above water. And I think that's why she draws so much queer appeal.
Yeah. Like, I think, like, her and Honey Rider have very similar, like, sexual assaulty, like, backstory that we're told of. But I think she is handled so much better, especially in this film, because, again, so many people say Honey Rider's one of the best, and I'm like, okay, sure, girl. But I'm like, this person has a very similar backstory and is great until she is, like, dickmatized by James Bond, which, you know, we've all made bad choices for love. But I really appreciate her because she is a chameleon. It does feel like she's playing every single side and angle and not just both sides. And I'm rooting for her. Like, by the end, I think she's so smart. And I love that she has her own voice and it's not dubbed.
Yeah. And like you said, David, like this version of Tiffany Case is not saddled with this tragedy in her backstory. So you can sort of make up whatever you want for her. That, you know, and I love her. I just really do.
I think it says a lot that she was named after the shop where her mother happened to be. And like, what kind of childhood has this kid had?
Right.
So I think, although it's almost a throwaway line in a way, it's like, if you pause and think about that, you go, possibly not the best childhood.
It's like, there's breakfast at Tiffany's, then there's birthing at Tiffany's.
By the way, was your reference to keeping your head above water a slight to Plenty O'Toole? Was that?
Yeah, possibly.
Y'all,
slip there.
have y'all seen the tweet where Lana Wood like comments because there's a picture of like her and Jill St. John like laughing and looking at each other, and she basically accuses it of being like photoshopped or something?
Well, that was I think it was like 2000 or 2019 that they did like a big Bond women photo shoot, and the photographer, and maybe it was Annie Leibovitz, I might be wrong about that, was like, you two get together because you're in the same, and it was like a big to do about even getting them in the same photo. So
I feel
it
like
probably
it'd be a big
is.
to do to get them in the same location at the same time without Lana I would say probably rightfully throw in some hands if you know their very long and
I mean,
storied
she
history.
has claimed that she's gotten threatening phone calls from a woman that is not Jill St. John's voice, because she would have recognized it, but about some of the Robert Wagner stuff. And
Honestly, I would believe it based on what other wild people do in Hollywood.
and then in terms of Bambi and Thumper, I just hope they're gainfully employed elsewhere. I just hope they
I
made
was
it
gonna
out of that
say,
situation, protecting
I
somebody
needed a
else.
spinoff of them just like doing gymnastics and antics. Love it.
The Winton Kid Bambi and Thumper hour.
Imagine those four on a gay cruise or something.
Speaking of Mr. Winton, Mr. Kid, in terms of our villains, they're, other than Blofeld, they're like really our main villains. I mean, there's like Bert Saxby, who's like barely a character. There's Shady Tree, who's like barely a character. But you spend literally a good third of this movie, maybe a fourth, with Winton Kid. Their like little side adventure. And like you said, David, there's a good chance they're not even working for Blofeld.
They just have hobbies.
Yeah,
I do
exactly.
love, like, yes, there's the stereotype of gay villains, blah, blah, blah. I do love when gay villains are so competent and having fun. They have some
Yeah.
style to them. And you know what? They're so creative with their killing. Like,
It's the classic overachiever syndrome. We have to be better than everybody else.
Yes,
To
exactly.
be able to succeed.
and they are.
Famously, Chels, they had to reshoot their first kill with the dentist because I have seen this deleted scene where Mr. Wint like shoved the scorpion into the dentist's mouth, and the British censors were like, "That's too much. Like, you need to redo this."
Oh my gosh. Okay. I hate when George Lucas's his films. Can we George Lucas that scene back in there? That would
I
be so fun.
I don't think that scene's been restored. The versions of it I've seen have been pretty low quality. So
Dang. Somebody do the good work. Restore it. And then send it to me.
Mrs. Whistler did want some pictures of the canals for the children.
How kind of you, Mr. Kidd. The children will be so thrilled.
And then Blofeld, I don't know. Do we even have much more to say on Blofeld? He's camp, he's fun. Charles Gray is actually one of my favorite Blofelds too. I love the difference between him and Telly Savalas, because I really love Telly Savalas' Blofeld as well. And those are two of the maybe more fleshed out versions that we get. Because you actually, spoiler alert for you, Chels, don't get to see Blofeld very much after this. And I think like I love the like idea that like these two Blofelds could possibly even be the same person, especially because Telly Savalas is so menacing and so, but also kind of grand. There's that whole scene at the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service where like he's chatting with Tracy, where it is very effete and very like, why is this guy talking like this? And so it is believable that he could be this Charles Gray Blofeld just a few years removed.
I feel like this, like, between movies, Blofeld has had a coming out journey and is really embracing their inner queen. And I support that.
It's true.
The thing is though with Blofeld, I've been thinking about this quite a lot recently because I've been writing about Spectre, and a lot of people hate Christoph Waltz's portrayal of Blofeld.
Guilty.
And yeah, I've got thoughts about it. But the thing is, every Blofeld needs to be different. Like in Fleming's books, Blofeld is a different character really in each of the three books he appears in.
That's true.
He actually looks different in each one. He's physically transformed himself in all three books. And he's got a different personality as well. So the character is not consistent in the books at all. So I'm like, why do people feel the need to have that sort of continuity in the films? I suppose it's just because it's so visual on film. But there's definitely my theory with Blofeld in Diamonds and Ways, the best one is like he's doing everything to try and outdo James Bond, which is sort of what we get. I don't want to spoil anything because Chelsea hasn't seen it yet.
Oh,
But
you
he's
can
sort of
spoil. I will forget.
It's by the time you get to Spectre, the motivation of Blofeld is entirely personal. It's a vendetta against Bond. And I think you've got that sort of, it's almost like the Joker Batman rivalry going on in Diamonds Forever. Blofeld needs Bond, and sort of, which is partly the reason why he tries to kill him in really inefficient ways and all the rest of it. I think he would actually be incredibly bored if James Bond was to actually die, by the time we get to Diamonds Are Forever. So I find that dynamic more interesting than like Donald Pleasance for all the physicality of his Blofeld. Essentially, he just wants lots of money.
Yeah.
And then on Her Majesty's Secret Service, the motive is brilliantly weird. It's snobbery. He wants recognition of his title.
That is a very gay thing too, wanting
It
credit.
is a very, yeah, totally. And then Diamonds, it's what is Blofeld actually trying to do with this giant laser? He's basically trying to, well, you could see it, I suppose, as a bit of a penis measuring contest with James Bond. So that's really all there is to it. So that's why I love this portrayal of the character.
I love it. Just the fact that a cat has that many diamonds on its collar. I'm
Mhm.
here for this. The extravagance, like, oh, and again, the importance of queer people playing queer characters. Like,
Yeah.
we need to recognize that.
Yeah,
Charles Gray, I
totally.
love you. Rest in peace, girly.
Yeah, truly one of the best to do it. And then I just threw in a bunch of gadgets. If there's any gadgets that stick out to you, love the mousetrap in the pocket. Love the grappling gun suit combo, which is kind of a cool, like, totally never brought up before he uses it. Like, just like has a total grappling belt in his thing. The voice changer, and then the slot machine ring, which I wish all of us to have at some
I
point.
want all of these. I low-key think when they were thinking about casting Adam West, they were like, wait, Batman always be grappling, always be hooking. Let's just do this.
Batman is always hooking. I'm always saying that. Especially like it's always the like simplest ones that get me, and the mousetrap pocket one is so brilliant. And like
Honestly,
kind of gruesome when
this
you
is
see
my
it.
new business proposal. I'm gonna make this and market it to help people who, you know, the populations that are usually attacked, we'll just say.
Yeah. David, do you have a favorite gadget from this movie at all, or?
I think it is the piton gun. That's just so cool. And even though it was set in it was clearly a soundstage or whatever, there's something quite beautiful about that sequence about Bond actually swinging out over Las Vegas, and of course the Barry score. We mentioned the music a little bit, but Barry's score for Diamonds Are Forever is so sublime.
It really is.
There's so many gorgeous. I mean, my favorite cue is when Bond's. It's just him walking into Willard White's house, the penthouse, where just before he meets Bambi and Thumper. In fact, the cue is called Bond Meets Bambi and Thumper. But it's that bit. You don't actually have music for that scene. It's just him walking through a house, wearing his pink tie, which we
Yes.
haven't mentioned. The short, fat pink tie, which again people deride. That was one of the things I wanted to tackle through my website. I was like, yes, James Bond can wear a pink tie. In fact, Sean Connery wears a lot of pink in his portrayal as Bond. But it's just so cool, that music, and it literally is just Bond walking into a house. So if you want to make your Sunday morning chores more exciting, put that track on and move around your kitchen or clean the bathroom or whatever. It makes everything so much cooler.
Yeah, John Barry going so hard on this soundtrack across the board. I am just so proud, impressed. Did it truly for us girlies. And I love that.
Well, that I truly think that is the best way to end this, because I do. John Barry was a master, and truly, and also like any interview with him is just great. He does not give a shit. He will tell you the truth as it was.
My favorite kind of interviewee.
But I want to thank you so much for joining us, David. Before we get out of here, I do want you to please tell the other agents where they can find you online. Obviously, the aforementioned License to Queer, but I know you're doing so much more than just that.
Oh, yeah. So I suppose the best thing to do is to head to license2queer.com or just Google License to Queer. And you'll find the website with all the articles. I put links up to the various podcast episodes and all the rest of it. You can obviously get the podcast wherever you get podcasts, the YouTube as well. It's all called License to Queer. For non-UK residents, it's spelt with 2 C's, license, like the film title. Actually, the 1989 Timothy Dalton film, spelled like that way, the British spelling. And so there's the podcast, there's the YouTube, there's the website. Instagram, I put most stuff on Instagram nowadays because X is a toxic cesspit.
Yeah.
And but I am on Blue Sky. I just forget to post things on there. So basically everything goes on Instagram first. And then I try to remember to put it everywhere else. But feel free to reach out. I'm always after new contributors, people to lend their perspectives. So there's probably, I reckon, about 24, people who've written articles, or probably a lot more actually now. We've been on podcasts and that sort of thing. A series that I started doing last year and is continuing, which I'm quite passionate about, is the On Our Minds Only series. So I recognize that not everyone finds it comfortable to talk about mental health. I've been very open about some of my own mental health battles in pieces that I've written and podcasts and things. And so I started doing a series with people sharing their journeys. So we've covered everything from anxiety, depression, through to suicidal thoughts, hypervigilance, tons of those topics. Because, although we talk about James Bond a lot, you can talk about lots of other things when you start talking about James Bond, as this podcast has demonstrated. So yeah, if you want to get involved with that, or if you just got an idea for an article, or you want to be on a podcast or whatever, just reach out, and that'd be great.
That's so amazing. And honestly, seriously, congratulations for 5 years. That is a thing, it's lovely to be able to work on something that is your passion and to have it succeed. And that's, it's very beautiful that you've been able to do this for 5 years. And I hope for many, many, many years more after this.
Oh, I've got a massive list of articles I haven't written yet.
Good, good.
The list just keeps growing. There's
Never
just so
shut
much-
up.
Yeah, I'm not going to. Don't worry.
Love it.
And with that, that's case closed on Diamonds Are Forever. Thank you for listening to Q Division. If you'd like to listen to our previous episodes, we're available wherever you listen to podcasts. Please make sure to rate and review our show while you're there. You can also find us on Blue Sky and Instagram at QDivisionPod on both, or you can email us at qdivisionpod@gmail.com. Chels, please remind the agents where they can find you.
I'm Chels725 on Blue Sky, on Serialized, which is like TV Letterboxd, which is my favorite thing in the world right now. And then Actual Letterboxd, which is right now one of my least favorite things in the world. But
Oh no.
too many pretentious people comment on my stuff. I need to go private.
Yeah, you can set the messages to only people that follow you,
Oh my
because
gosh.
I had to do that too as well. So
Ooh, you're gonna have to show me that later. But no, I do And a Rewatch Pod, where we talk mostly about television. So we did Mythic Quest, and we're gonna do a nice series wrap on that. We also talk Drag Race, Yellow Jackets. This summer, we're gonna call Selfie Summer, where we go back to a tragically canceled TV show. And I also talk about soap operas there, like Days of Our Lives, General Hospital, Beyond the Gates. It is so much fun. And that is like a whole all queer person on the versions I do. It's great. But then I will be on Life Moves Pretty Fast this summer talking about Unpregnant, one of my favorite little queer road trip movies. And then I've been on Anna Runner-Up is on the 2015, 1977, and the 1930-31 episodes, and a bunch of bonus ones. I think my Gimmicks episode about Marlena Evans' devil possession will be out on pretty soon, so go look for that. And of course, Screonk, where I talked about Shin Godzilla and had the time of my life. Oh, my finest hours.
Those boys are great. I was on a Screonk episode about Godzilla versus Biollante, which is,
And then a Criterion came out.
yes.
Look at all your hard work.
I was gonna say I'd like to believe my impact. I've got it in with them since they put some of my stuff on their special features. So I literally have no contact with them, but I was happy to find out some of my stuff ended up on their on the DVD of All the Beauty and Bloodshed. Well, the Blu-ray. So yeah.
Oh my
so
gosh.
Go check that
That's
out.
amazing.
Cool. And as for me, my declassified account on Blue Sky is it's Gavin. That's SHH. And you can find me on Instagram if you really want to at GavinBev. You can also find my other long-running film podcasts at The Mixed Reviews on any podcast platform, co-hosted by my good friend Louis Rendon. To find more information about The Mixed Reviews, please visit glitterjaw.com/mix-reviews. And until next time, we hope to left you shaken, not stirred.
Diamond